fear is showing you the edge of your comfort zone. Like fear is a physical manifestation of where you're pushing past your normal self. So usually what we do is we feel fear and then we back off a little bit. When in reality, when we feel fear, we should literally feel that feeling and go, oh, I've met my edge. This is where I need to keep pushing.
If you are interested in being a coach, a life coach, or having a profession where you help people reach their potential, Rob Dial is a guy that you need to tune into. He is a coach of coaches as well as being a coach himself. I learned some incredible things about not only, well, hey, I need a coach just like everybody else needs a coach. And subsequently from filming this podcast, I hired my own coach. And it's really been a powerful episode for me, and I know it will be a powerful episode for you. He's a well-rounded guy. We talk about all different types of things on our own unique journeys. He's got a great podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Rob Dial. The truth is that we're all the master. We're all the healer. We're all the mystic.
Give it up one time for Aubrey Marcus.
Rob,
hey buddy,
we've traded seats.
We have.
And now here we are. One thing we were just talking about, and it's something that we both firmly agree, is that we come into life and we're an incredibly complicated animal.
Yeah.
And the operating manual for this animal is not provided.
Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not what we're taught.
Yeah.
Our parents don't know. And certainly in school, they don't give a fuck. We're not taught how to breathe. We're not taught how to think. We're not taught how to deal with our emotions. We're just taught, I mean, yes, learning how to read is important, like in the young, and learning how to add, basic multiplication tables and shit like that. Like that's all helpful. But so much of what we learn is nonsensical compared to what the really important stuff is that we can learn about ourselves and learn how to navigate life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So you got to think about it. We're given no manual for the brain that we have. And they don't teach any of this shit in college. They don't teach any of it when we're younger. And it's like, I was talking with somebody actually literally about you the other day and how you were going and doing ayahuasca, and someone's like, again? And I was like, you don't understand. Like there's still so much that we have to learn about ourselves. And I was listening to interview not too long ago, and someone was talking about literally the fact that no matter how much you learn about yourself, there's always like another level. I had a mushroom ceremony that I did when I was in Sedona. I was sitting by the creek, and I had this whole visual of this rose that just never stopped blooming. Like it would just bloom, and then the petals would fall off, and then it would bloom again. And it was like, that's how your life is. Like whenever you find something new about yourself, there's always another level to yourself that's deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think the most intriguing thing that we can do is go, all right, well, let me learn about myself. Like, let me learn what my triggers are. Because if I'm triggered, I'm not free wherever it is. So if my mom says something and I'm triggered, it's like Ram Dass says, he thought he was enlightened. And then he came back from India and his dad picked him up in the car ride. And he's got like his big long beard. He's got his white robe, and his dad's like 15 minutes into it. He thinks he's like, Buddha or Jesus almost. And his dad goes, so when are you going to get a job? And he's like immediately was triggered by that. And it's like, you think that you have gotten to this level of like, I know myself. And then you start to learn more about yourself and you realize you don't know yourself at all. And it's like, the thing that intrigues me the most is like, why am I the way that I am? Like you seem like a very philosophical guy as well. Like I sit along in silence for a long time and I'm like, why do I think this way? Why do I have this tick? Why am I triggered by when people say this to me or when I act this way? And it's just like, what else are we supposed to do? Like for me, that seems like the reason why we're here is to fully discover ourselves.
Yeah.
And the way to discover yourself is by going deep into it and going, well, why do I work this way? There's no manual given to you of saying, hey, this is how Aubrey Marcus works. But when you go and do the ayahuasca ceremonies, you start to realize why Aubrey Marcus works the way that he does.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I think people try to reduce a human being to a machine. And in a machine, if you could patch a software issue, it's fixed forever.
Right.
You fixed it. It's a machine. It's going to reliably, but we're not a machine in that way. We're constantly interacting with the environment. So just because I did ayahuasca when I was 30 and had a profound experience doesn't mean that accumulating all of those years, or it doesn't even have to be that many years. It could be a month. It could be a week. New interactions will come on. New energies I'll take on. New thought patterns. New viral programs I'll take on. And so there's so much to clean. Plus there's even layers and layers and layers of depth that go all the way down to your birth.
Yeah.
This was something I was talking about with my family yesterday. So Stan Groff, who I'm sure you're familiar with, at least in a cursory level, he has a theory about the basic perinatal matrices. And he says, so much of our life is shaped by what happens during our actual birth. And I was going through this. We're going through all of us in the family. And there's certain patterns that we haven't been able to really break based upon this. So it goes like this. And I'd love to dive into you and see if this applies. So BPM1, basic perinatal matrix 1, is you're in the womb. Everything is good. Your mom's taking care of you. You're being nourished. The umbilical cord is supplying your food. You're swimming in this float tank of endlessness. Of course, there are boundaries, but you're really contained and cared for, right? The heartbeat is there, beating, this kind of warm, rhythmic heartbeat. And of course, there's tumultuous when the mother's stressful. Things can get chaotic in there. But generally, this is a utopic experience for a young infant. Then the water breaks. Fuck. All chaos. Your world is collapsing in around you. You're fluid, home. Now everything is vacuum tight close to you and you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do. And the mother's in stress and everything gets really chaotic. The heartbeats becomes faster and more erratic. And it's like, what the fuck is going on?
It's like a horror movie.
It's a horror movie. It's a horror movie for a fetus. Then, all right, BPM 3. So that's BPM 2. BPM 3 is the birth canal opens. And it's like, oh, I know what I got to do. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here and I got to fight. I got to get out of here. The mom's fighting with me. Mom's pushing. You're going. You got your head. You're like a torpedo. You're like, I'm getting out of here. I'm fucking getting out of here. And so you move through that matrix. And then BPM 4 is the ecstasy and agony of that first breath. Lights. Oxygen fills your lungs. It's cold. It's like this whole new world, your tiny myopic little world where you're self-contained. It just bursts into all of this. Wow, we're in a whole nother reality. And whoa, I'm a separate being, and it's that moment. So it's the ecstasy and the agony of that moment of separation from the mother. So in a fluid process, that all happens just kind of like that. You experience all of these things and you move through them with as much grace and love as possible. But for so many of us, well, first of all, the birth process is intense. I mean, that BPM 4, like I really have a lot of respect for the water births because it's just kind of a nicer rounding the edges a little bit because you're birthed into more fluid and there's kind of loving people around you, but that sterile, cold, hospital, fluorescent lights being pulled, jabbed with a vaccine, like fuck.
Yeah.
It all went real bad, right? So that's like something that's pretty ubiquitous unless you're doing a home birth. But even still, it's still like a fluid progression. But for so many of us, like myself, so let me talk about my story. So my mom goes into labor. Obviously great experience. BPM 1's great. Water breaks. My mom's, she's an ex-pro athlete and she's a badass. So, she wasn't too stressed out. She's got this. Gets to the hospital. Her doctor's asleep. So they have like a nurse who's trying to deliver me. And she's in excruciating labor, pushing for like hours. It's middle of the night, starts at like 2 a.m. Middle of the night. And it's not happening. It's not happening. And then so 4 hours later, mom's like, you've got to get the doctor. Something is wrong. Like, I know myself. It's not that I'm not pushing hard enough. Like, I know myself. And the nurse is like, oh, okay. Goes and gets the doctor. Doctor comes in immediately. He's like, what the fuck? Like, his head is stuck on her pelvis. It can't go out. It's like bones are stuck on his head. They can't use a forceps. Doesn't matter. It's not soft tissue. It's hard tissue. So emergency C-section, I get pulled out. So my pattern is where I get stuck in my life is that I will start fighting for something and I'll fight like hell, but I don't believe that I'm going to succeed unless there's a divine intervention. Right?
Really?
So like, I'll go like hell and I'll fight and I know that I'm a fighter and I know that I will fight because I suppose that I was fighting with my mom and my mom was fighting and we were kind of in that synchronicity of we're fighting together, but it didn't work. And so I'll tend to fall into this hopelessness. Like, it doesn't matter how much I fight. It's not going to work unless like some divine intervention, aliens, God, something comes and happens, which is represented by this emergency C-section where it's all of a sudden like the fighting didn't matter and I was just getting rescued and pulled out. So that pattern has played out, for my whole life where I'll fall into this feeling of hopelessness, like my fight won't work. And so...
Do you think that's why you like psychedelics? Do you feel like it is almost like that that hand of God coming in and helping you? Do you feel like that relates in some way?
I mean, psychedelics are definitely like the divine hand helping me. Maybe that plays in. I never thought of it like that, but I wouldn't put it past it. It's interesting though, because especially like in this last ayahuasca, it is so fucking hard, man.
For sure.
It was so hard. I had to use every coping strategy. I had to tap and shake and vomit and sweat and self-soothe. I mean, it was beautiful because it forced me to adapt to incredibly difficult circumstances. But it was kind of fighting and being rescued at the same time. So it was like somewhere in between. So maybe it was smoothing the edges, and maybe that's what I need to like struggle and be successful. Because ultimately there was triumph at the end of these. Like, fuck, I made it through.
Yeah.
Like I made it through. It wasn't like ayahuasca was like, and now it's going to be easy. It was never that. It was like hard until like I fought my way through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the hopelessness that I think is the thing I need to shed. And I think to really transcend that, you got to go into a full rebirth, like a real rebirth, like deep down to the deeper layers. And maybe that's why I keep going too, is I haven't hit that full reset of that initial pattern that just kind of stamped me with this sense. So I would ask you, I'd flip it around and see if it applies. You know, who knows? So this is just Stan Groff's theory. It seems to work for me. But do you know anything about your birth process? And can you
Supposedly
extrapolate
for
that?
my mom, it was pretty quick and easy.
Right.
But I also don't, because it's interesting, because as you're saying, you getting stuck, from what I know, I wasn't stuck in any sort of way, and it wasn't really much of a hard process. And then the second thing is like, I don't ever feel like I can't do something. Like there's actually the opposite of what I want. It doesn't exist in my reality. Like, and I think I think that in my mind is like the secret to manifestation. Like people can say, and I love affirmations, they can meditate and they can visualize and all that stuff, but there's ultimately this subconscious underworkings. It's like, you know, I was talking with someone the other day, it's like conscious, subconscious, deep subconscious, where it's like we can kind of understand our subconscious, and then sometimes there's things that are so deep that we don't even know that are there.
Deep unconscious.
So deep. And that's usually what you come up with whenever you do some sort of psychedelics, where it pops up and maybe there is like seeing your birth again, or seeing something pop up that happened as a child when you completely forgot. And that's like that deep unconscious. But for me, it's like I have this like hardcore belief in myself. And I was also alone a lot as a kid. You know, so like my sister's 6 years older than me. So by the time I was 9, I was like a latchkey kid. I would let myself in, hang out by myself all the time. My dad was an alcoholic by the time I was 9. So he was always at bars or just disappeared. My mom was always working. And so I think through that, and then also possibly through the birthing process, bring this up, I've just developed this, I won't lose. Like my best friend says, he calls me, I'm like a cockroach. Like I just don't give up on things because I don't see the opposite of what I want as a reality in this. Like I remember literally when COVID came out, I did a podcast episode in like March of last year. And I was like, I will not get it. I'm not going to get it. There's no fucking way on this earth I'm going to get it. And I'm telling myself and my cells that if it does come in contact with it, I will not get it. They will kill off whatever it comes in contact with. You know, to this day, I still haven't gotten it. And I'm not vaccinated. I'm not taking the best protection, you know, like I'll do what needs to be done. And it's not like I'm staying inside of my house all the time. But in my mind, it's just, there's never been an opposite of what I want. And I think that that's the key to manifesting stuff. And from what I've been told, my birthing process is pretty easy. I was in and out and I was gone.
I think that's, see, for me, I know how to fight, but I'm always surprised when I win. I mean, not in like sports and stuff. Like I have a lot of confidence in myself in that stuff because I've proven it in many different ways. Like if I step on the pickleball court, I'm pretty sure I'm going to win. If we play ping pong, I'm like, yeah, fucking, I got this, or whatever, you know, like, but when like things with On It, you know, it was always like, whoa, this worked. You mean like I'm going to win?
I do get surprised when I was like,
whoa, this is fucking wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. And your birth process being so smooth, there's no imprinting. And I think that's beautiful in a way. It's just your imprinting has come from other sources. So because the process was smooth, there's no place which you're perpetually stuck. So you got a whole, it's not like you get a free ride. You got a whole host of other shit you got to deal with.
I got an easy birth because I got fucked later on in life. That's what it was.
Yeah, but we all get our struggles. And that's also one of the things that I really hate is when people say, easy for you to say,
Right.
like, how the
Right.
fuck do you know
Right.
anybody else's experience? It's all subjective.
Yeah.
Easy for you to say Anthony Bourdain, okay, he hung himself.
Yeah.
Right? Like easy for you to say fucking whoever, like what you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what's inside. Everybody's struggle is subjective.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can say you don't know. It's all internal. Yes, there's really hard external things that people have had to deal with. Impossible for us to even imagine the external challenges that some people have had to face, whether it's Auschwitz or racism or genocide or whatever, is sexism to the extreme, whatever. There's awful shit. I'm not trying to deny that. But all too often we try to pretend like we know somebody else's experience. We don't.
For sure. I think it was Gabor Mate. I saw a quote that he had yesterday, and it was like, people think of trauma when they go back to it. Because I love his stuff for trauma. I don't know if there's anybody else that's better in the world for trauma. And people think of trauma as like, and these are all trauma: verbal, sexual, physical abuse, all of the stuff that you just named. Those are all trauma. But the most common trauma is, some form of neglect emotionally by someone's parents, which you don't see that physically on someone. There's no scars, which sometimes make those even harder to work through, because they go into that unconscious and the subconscious where it's like, okay, I know that this thing happened to me because physically I have the bruise from it. That might be easier to work through than something where it's like, I didn't realize that I went to there's a friend of ours that's local here, and he's like, hey, he's a relationship therapist. He's like, hey, you and Lauren should come in and just chat. And I was like, cool. And we started chatting, and I had no idea. He goes, we started talking about childhood, and my childhood, like, my mom's amazing. She was incredible. She's the strongest fucking person I've ever met. And so I've learned everything from her in that way. But because of the fact that my dad was gone so much, she had to work obviously to get us to live, right? And to be able to pay our bills and everything. And he goes, yeah, you were neglected. And I was like, no, I wasn't neglected. Like, there was nothing wrong. He goes, no, you were emotionally neglected. And I was like, oh yeah, that resonates. I was like, fuck, I've never thought of that before. But it's not her fault. And it's like, oh yeah, my trauma comes from, and I can see it popping up in different relationships of like, I'm not fully there because of the fact that I didn't have somebody that was fully there for me when I needed somebody the most. Yeah. So it's like, but you don't see that physically on somebody's body. Yeah. And there's a lot of that happens to people. And so when people are out there and they think, oh, my trauma is not that much, it could be, Yeah.
The game of comparing trauma is a losing game.
For sure.
Like you just don't know. And you don't know how sensitive a person was. It's like saying some people go to war and they come back and they're like, war was awesome, and some people are like scarred for life, deep PTSD, dissociations, same war, same set of circumstances, but it's a different person. Yeah. So we just don't really know. So just having like respect for each individual's struggle. I think it was East Forest who, reframes things, and as someone's going through something challenging, instead of trying to judge them and justify whether they should be going through something challenging or not, just recognize on face value the challenge that they're going through and say, wow, that's a brave soul taking on this challenge, because the challenge they take on individually is taking on that challenge collectively. So
I don't know if you've ever felt this way. When you get a few days into an ayahuasca ceremony, you look at the people around you and you're like, oh, I fucking respect you. Like the fact that you're still showing up to this.
Absolutely.
Like I've seen people go through, like they've been wrecked, right? And they still show up, and I'm like, I don't know this person, didn't know him 4 days ago, but like, I love this person for showing up. And they're like, there's people that are like the biggest personalities and the most badass hardcore people. That is what they try to show on Instagram and all that stuff. They won't sit down and do an ayahuasca ceremony. Yep. But Sally, who's 66 years old, is fucking showing up for ceremony 3 and 4. Yeah. And I'm like, I love this woman. She's way stronger than any guy that tries to act like he's the biggest, baddest thing on Instagram and show stuff off. And it's like, you realize like people are stronger than you think, but they've also been through a lot more than you think. And it's like, it gives you, I think the journey of working on yourself gives you compassion for everybody. Because you don't know what anybody's going through ever, like, and I said this when you were on my podcast, but the thing that stuck with me the most was I went through 4 ceremonies, and then we had breath work the last 3 nights. And on the last night, the lady who was like the most quiet, sweetest lady. I went and did ayahuasca with my mom, and she was like, always talk with my mom and stuff. And she never shared at after any of the breath work, any of the ceremonies, any of that stuff. And she raised her hand the last day and she's like, I've thought about killing myself every single month, sometimes every week, sometimes every day, and sometimes every hour. And she goes, in that breathwork ceremony, I met my inner child and realized that when I kill myself, I kill her, and I can never kill myself. Like that, it doesn't even exist in my reality, you know? And you see someone who's quiet and sweet and think, oh, they may not have gone through a whole lot. But then you see that and you're like, this woman's been thinking about killing herself hundreds of times.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't not have compassion for people out there because you have no idea what they've gone through.
Right. It's, I think one of the most valuable aspects of ayahuasca, of course, the healing is profound. You know, being able to meet your inner child and see her and feel her, feel him, see him, talk to them. Yeah. It's one of the many things that's just possible. You can't go in expecting that, but it's possible. And all of these things are possible. It works in such a magnificent and mysterious way. But the one thing that's reliable is that it's going to be fucking hard. Yeah. And there's such virtue in the difficulty of it. That's what I was thinking in the middle of it. This was definitely the hardest sit with ayahuasca I've ever done, more physically than emotionally or mentally. It was like, I felt like I was a 110 watt bulb and ayahuasca was like, how's 500? And I was like, no, what the fuck? I can't hold it. And so I was like speaking in tongues and shaking and sweating and puking and shitting and like, fuck, how do I get this extra 400 watts out of my system? I can't hold it. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, the visions are amazing. Yes, I feel God all around me. Yeah. But I'm like a fucking little light bulb and you're going to explode me. Yeah. But in that, I was like, man, how rad. Like how rad to go through something this hard. Yeah. And then, as I said, like form those adaptations. Like I've developed a really sweet and loving voice that I've never had. You know, I'm more I lean more towards that kind of David Goggins, Cameron Haynes, keep hammering, stay hard, fucking push through, you pussy. Yeah. You know, like,
that's how I speak to
like
myself.
What's wrong with you? Like fucking anxious again, you little bitch. You know, like that's what my default is. Yeah. But in this, that didn't work. Like I was like, I was too vulnerable. I was too stripped. I was too like shaken and just thirsty and tired. And I just wanted a blanket and some lip balm and someone to like fucking wipe my face when the puke was everywhere. Like and so the voice that came through was like, it's all right, babe. Like it was like really sweet. It's like, it's all right, love. Like, I know it's hard. I know. It's okay. You're going to make it through like you always do. It's okay. Like, I know. And I'd feel it. And I know. It's hard. I know. Like, I know, babe. And it was like really talking like I would to like a lover. And that voice was what got me through. And that voice is now, I can now hear it. Like when, you know, cause I'm prone to feeling anxious. Like, am I doing enough for the world is going on? Yeah. And I'll have that voice come back instead of being like, God, anxious again? How much more fucking work you want to do on yourself? Right. You know, like maybe change strategies, right. You know, like this really aggressive masculine voice. Instead it's like, okay, I know you're anxious right now. I know it's hard. Just take some deep breaths. That's it. Deep breath. I'm like, and it's so nice, you know, but it's the difficulty and making it through the difficulty that shows that you can go through the difficulty, and then you learn different ways to cope with that difficulty. So when life throws difficult things at us, which it always does, you're ready.
But how amazing is that you now have this new little voice inside of your head to speak with you the way that you actually want to be spoken to, you know, or actually that you probably need to be spoken to as well. You know, because I always think back to when I was a kid, like if you look at videos of me, there's a video of me on my third birthday party, and my girlfriend was watching it. We were watching it a few months ago, and she was laughing because like everyone else is playing and I'm in the sandbox by myself, just like playing with toys. I was just like a quiet, sweet kid that just like brought my mom rocks and brought my mom flowers, you know? And it's like, how would you speak to that kid when he's really sick and throwing up? Probably the way that, you know, ayahuasca came into your head and started speaking to you. And then I've developed over years of, you know, as a guy, you have to be hard and you have to kick ass and be strong and all of that stuff. And it's like, then you go through, for me, when my father passed away when I was 15, he passed away on a Thursday. I went back to school on Monday and I didn't tell anybody, not even my best friends. And so it's like, I've learned to develop this, like, don't talk about it. Don't be a bitch. You know, nobody cries, any of that type of stuff. And so it's like, I have this whole there's like real Rob, and then there's the Rob that I've developed. And the Rob, what's crazy is the Rob that I have developed has gotten me to a certain level of success or whatever it is that you want to call it in life. But then it only gets you to a certain place. And to get you to like the next level of it, it's like, I need to reintegrate the childhood Rob and rediscover that, because that's what's actually going to get me to whatever my next version of myself is. The way I like to think of it, I'm very visual, is like, you know, if you were to take and just draw a line straight up, it's like your birth is right here, and then all the way straight up, it's just a straight line, as if you were to go through life and be perfect, nothing ever happens to you, right? Like that's like your perfect true self. But at some point in time, there's like a break. There's something that happens. There's a trauma, and there's some sort of like fake self that takes us off course. Like this is who we truly are. It takes us off course, and we go so far. Some people never wake up to it. And then some people wake up to it and they're like, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, Jim Carrey talking about people that are in depression. Like obviously there's chemical imbalance and stuff, but a lot of times he says it's just, you know, you just need deep rest from who you've become. Like you don't want to play that character anymore. Like have you seen Jim and Andy?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God, it's fucking incredible. So Jim and Andy is when Jim Carrey plays Andy Kaufman in the movie The Man on the Moon. And he plays as a method actor. And he plays, which means that he never breaks character. So he's Jim Carrey playing a real life person who used to, you know, who died 20 years before. But Andy Kaufman also played other characters. So he played Tony Clifton. And so what would happen is he would literally take on, for 3 months, 4 months, whatever it was, he never broke character of Andy Kaufman unless he was playing somebody else. And so then it gets real crazy where he died kind of abruptly, had some sort of cancer. I think it was like a lung cancer that he had. And his family, Andy Kaufman's family, comes in and has therapy sessions with Jim Carrey acting as Andy Kaufman, having therapy sessions. And so not only is he playing the character, he's literally having therapy sessions with the family of Andy Kaufman, right? So he's like deep into it. And people are always like, what happened to Jim Carrey?
Blurring the line between acting and seance.
Right, yeah, for sure. And so he's like, you know, so then what happens is the movie ends, and he is like, all right, now I got to go back to being Jim Carrey. And he's like, who the fuck is Jim Carrey? Like, I don't remember what I like. I don't remember what I don't like. I don't remember what triggers me. I don't remember what pisses me off. And so people are always like, where did he go through this big spiritual awakening? It started on this movie.
Wow.
What's cool about it, they did a whole documentary. As the movie's rolling, there's the documentary happening at the same time. So you get to see what he's doing the whole time. But what happened was he woke up. That's like his waking up point of going, oh, here's where I actually would have been had I just gone to this path, and perfect birth to amazing life to perfect death, most enlightening being, I become a light being and just disappear into the ether or whatever it is, right?
Rainbow eye.
Right. Yeah. Just turn into a unicorn, whatever it is, right? But it's like he wakes up at this point and he goes, I got to get back to here. And so I feel like for people like us who have had some sort of awakening, if you want to call it that, of like, I'm playing a character that's not who I truly am. It's like, I'm trying to get back to this before I die if possible. And I might never get back to like that straight line, this is my perfect being. But when you say that's the voice that you heard, that's the voice of little 3-year-old Aubrey that needs to hear something. Like that's, that's your mom coming in and saying, it's okay, sweetie, you're just throwing up, you ate something bad.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, we need that comforting. And as men, it's kind of hard to be like, can you just speak sweet to me? Like, you know what I mean? Can I speak sweet to myself? But that's really what we need to kind of heal the last little, I don't want to say last little bit, but whatever it is that we're still working
it's good
towards.
to have both available. Like if I'm in a hard kettlebell workout with Juan Leja and Tim Kennedy, like I'm not going to be like, it's okay, hey, sweetie. I know.
Juan, can you speak to me sweetly, please?
No, it's like, fuck it, let's go. Like, so there's a place for all of those.
For sure.
And it's certainly, I don't want to, denigrate how it's actually helped build my life, because it certainly has. It's just, it comes with a cost, and it's not always applicable. It certainly wouldn't have been helpful in the ayahuasca ceremony. It's certainly not helpful when I feel anxious throughout the day or I start to feel a little sad. Like I don't need tough love then. I just need love.
Yeah.
But one thing I really loved how you're talking about is like the real Rob or the real Aubrey. Because I've been really feeling that as well. Like there's a real us. And I feel like our mind actually insulates us from access to the real us. Because if we get access to the real us, it's like the most powerful force that we have. Like, and so it's going to really dramatically change our life. Like if we really adopt the real us, and I could feel this in the last ayahuasca where I stepped into the real Aubrey in night 2. I stepped into the real Aubrey, and it was fucking overwhelming because I was like, fuck, it's not that I'm going to do anything outwardly different, but the person doing all of the things was so radically different that everything that I was doing was different. Every conversation would have been different. Every podcast was different. Every newsletter was different. Everything shifts, maybe just a little bit, 5%, 10%. I'm not that far off the real Aubrey, but it was significant enough that every different direction I looked, I was like, fuck, how I love my wife, how I like show up for my family, how everything was different. And it was overwhelming. And it's almost so overwhelming. You're like, fuck, I can't step into the real Aubrey right now. It's too much to handle. I got to ease my way. I got to like ease my way closer to it. And then there's also some way in which if you give access to somebody else to the real you, it's scary.
For sure.
It's really scary. It's much easier if you give access to a projection, well, you can always trash that projection. Like, well, you think that about the fake Aubrey? Fuck it. That Aubrey's not even real. So fuck you anyways. You know, you're going to.
Oh, you broke up with the fake Aubrey? Whatever. That's not even the real one, dude. I'm not hurt by the fake one.
Yeah. You can fucking dump the fake Aubrey all you want. I dumped the fake Aubrey. I dumped the fake Aubrey right now. I dumped him before you dumped him. So it's really like the most vulnerable and powerful place to arrive. And I think that's certainly an intention of mine, is to head into that. So where I'm really embodying that, because there's a real freedom and aliveness to that. I mean, as we're being the fake version of ourselves, we're not fully connected with our heart, which is our true essence, our true center, doesn't extend all the way through these avatars that we build. So we're not really living our life fully.
Yeah. And from like a place of absolute love, like it's scary because, I was listening to Ram Dass, and Ram Dass was talking about how, when you love somebody, what you're actually loving is what they're bringing out of you. Like that, when we look at someone that we like deeply love, it's not that we don't love that person, we do, but what they're doing is they're showing us a part of ourselves that we have access to at all points in time. Right. Like I think, and it was actually, I actually listened to the episode you had with Peter Crone where he was talking about you and Sedona, right? Where it's like you don't want to lose that house because you had so many spiritual awakenings and amazing things out there. And he's like, that's just the house and that's just Sedona, but they gave you access to a part of you that's there all the time. And so it's about us being consciously aware of like, why can't I be in love with a person that's, sitting on the side of a road asking for money? Like what would the truest version of Rob do right now? I have a good friend who is an incredible human, like one that I want to be. And he will, he like loves people more than anybody else that I know. And he'll give him $1 and he'll look him dead in the eye and he'll go, "Hey man, do you need a hug?" And then sometimes they say, yeah, and he goes, "All right, cool." And he puts his car in park at a stoplight and we'll get out and give that person a hug. And then he'll go, "Hey, do you need some food? Like, do you want to go get lunch or something?" He said like 50% of the time they say yes. And he'll go take a homeless person lunch. And he's like, he's like, "I don't care about when I park my car if I get the people behind me late." Like, because in reality, what are they seeing? They're seeing a person that doesn't know another person that people judge all the time, getting out and just giving this person a hug and then having them hop inside the car. Like that could be changing their day in some sort of way. And it makes me realize like I've got so much more work because there's a part of me that's like, well, what if they smell inside of my truck? Like, you know what I mean?
Totally,
like, they're like
totally. And it's okay for all of the people listening. You're like, fuck, I kind of like my passenger seat.
Well,
right? Like it's all right. Like we all have those feelings.
Yeah, and it's like, how can I get myself to that level of, I don't care if they smell at my truck. I don't care because what matters to me is like that other version. That person is just another version of me, going through things that's probably even harder than what I've gone through. And more than anything else, the only thing that's going to fix, not the only thing that's going to fix them, but what will help them in this moment is by giving that person some love and realizing that somebody here wants them to be here.
The true Rob and the true Aubrey and the true, what's your friend's name?
Ta. You know Ta?
Yeah, Ta.
Yeah.
The true Ta. They are living always in the state of inner being where they know that they are connected to all life, all people, the earth itself. Like we all know that. The true version of us knows that. It feels it. It's always true. The fake version of us, the person, the ego, the ego says, I am not all of that. And it's important to have the balance of both, but the true version knows that. And so we when we take that action, it's because we know that's us. And in the service to us externally, we're serving us internally, because you cannot separate those things. I think this is also like a big myth with this self-identification. Like, it's me, me, and then there's the rest of the world. Who do I trust? Me. Well, who is you? Like right now, me and you are an amalgamation of humans, because we're both in each other's heart field. We're looking each other in the eye. The mirror neuron effect is happening.
I'm breathing in your used oxygen.
That's right. We're merging to some degree, and also with everybody else in the room. Also, we cannot separate ourselves perfectly from our environment anyways, from a scientific standpoint, from certainly from a spiritual standpoint, from all of these standpoints. So softening the edges around individuality and recognizing our interbeing. So when you're, talking shit to someone on Instagram, like, that's you, man. That's you.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter which side you're on. There's a lot of polarity right now. Someone's like, fucking sheep. Okay, that's you. They disagree with, they're fucking super pro vax mandates. Sure. Fine. But it's still you. Like, if you're trying to denigrate them, doesn't matter. And they're like saying, oh, you're fucking spreading this virus and killing my grandma. Like, no, I'm you.
Yeah.
Like, this is the way to separate all of this. Like, we have to abandon the myth of separation and recognize our interconnectedness with that sense of love. That's the way out of this fucking gigantic polemic mess.
Yeah. And if you had that person's exact life, you would think exactly what they think. So if you look at somebody and you are pro or anti or whatever it is, I have to remind myself all the time, like, number one, I started unfollowing a ton of people just because I'm like, I can feel the toxicity of even just certain posts that aren't supposed to. I can feel it, whether it's them or whether it's me and my reaction to it, right? And I'm like, it's just not worth messing up my energy for the day.
Right.
And so if I would have had that person's exact life that I think is such an idiot, that thinks completely different than myself, if I would have had their exact same life, I'd probably think exactly the same as them.
And there's studies that show that, like, the number one determination of someone's religion is their parents' religion. Like, all of these things that we think are like, I believe in this. Yeah. Okay, why?
Yeah.
Because fucking everybody around you believed in it.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, when you look at it and you're like, all right, so I don't know what they've gone through. Going back to what we talked about towards the beginning, like, I don't know what they've gone through. Like that lady who had the breathwork ceremony and met her inner child. I don't know what she's gone through. So she might be, super pro something that I'm anti. But she's gone through a lot of shit that I've never gone through. I've gone through a lot of shit that she's never gone through. And if we switch places, we probably have still the exact same thoughts. If I was her, I'd have her exact same thoughts and her exact same pro or anti. And she was in my situation, I've had the exact same one as well. So it's like, I don't know what they're going through. So my immediate thing that I'm trying to get myself to go to is just compassion. I don't know them. I don't know what they've been through, but I can still try to at least show them some sort of love.
Yeah.
And not fight it, because if I fight it, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to make them feel better. It's not going to make me feel better, right? So if I go and fight this person on Instagram, I've never been like, I'm so glad that I spent 10 minutes going back and forth with that person on Instagram comments. Never. I've never been like, that was a great use of my time, and I feel amazing right now after doing it.
I have occasionally.
Really?
Only when with like loving patience.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about like back and forth.
Yeah. But there's a way that you can, and then someone will be like, hey man, I'm really sorry.
For sure.
Like, I just had a fucking bad day.
Yep.
But that's like the rare exception. Mm-hmm. It's just creating more antagonism and separation, right?
Right. Like, so
occasionally you can collapse it.
We should notice the separation. Anything that makes us feel separate from somebody else, we should try to stop doing. Like, it's pretty much at its simplest, right? If you want to put it that simple. If something makes me feel separate from you, then I should probably stop doing that thing, because it's not making you feel better. It's not making me feel better.
Yeah. And also there's a sticky fucking trap where we are constantly trying, as the ego, which only knows itself in relative position. Yeah. Like, that's the way the ego works. It knows itself in relative position. Are you a good basketball player? I don't know. Who's playing basketball?
Right.
Like, the only way you know if you're good or not is comparing yourselves to the other players.
For sure.
Right. And so that's what we do as an ego, comparing ourselves to everybody else in life. So we'll find a new game. All right, this game is morality and this game is this. How can I be better than that other person? So, so many ways we're just thinking that we're arguing for our beliefs, but what we're really arguing for is being better than someone else. Mm-hmm. And if you can take down someone who's admired or popular or whatever else, someone in the public eye. Oh, you're better than them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm better than Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan's out there promoting ivermectin, but I wouldn't. So I'm
Fucking
better than
horse
him.
dewormer.
Yeah, exactly. So then they get to say, when they go after him, they get to be better than Joe Rogan.
sure.
And then the ego likes that. Well, he may have done all of these awesome things, but I'm fucking better than him.
Yeah. It comes from a lack of like, self-worth is really what I think it comes to. If you look at it, and I notice myself going, oh, I want to say this thing, I want to compare myself. Really, instead of somebody going out and saying, oh, Joe Rogan's doing X, Y, Z, the best thing to do is go, okay, I'm noticing that I'm trying to bring him down so that I feel above him. The real question is, when was the first time I remember feeling not worthy? Right? Like that's kind of what we're going to.
That's it.
It's not that I need to bring him down and make myself feel better. So I need to go back to the immediate moment where I felt unworthy because I didn't get love from my mom, or because I didn't get recognition for getting an A, or whatever it is that somebody didn't get, where they didn't feel worthy. Joe Rogan's not the problem. It's my lack of worthiness that I need to work through. And it's a lot harder to work through that. I was having this conversation yesterday where it's like, it's a lot easier not to eat healthy, right? It's not easier not to work out. And it's all of that stuff is easier. Life is either easy now or hard later, or hard now and easy later. And most people just tend to choose the easy route. Mm-hmm. And if people would be more aware of like, am I choosing the easy route by trying to bring this person down versus actually looking at the core of myself as to why I don't feel worthy? I mean, that's what really people need to get to. It's just a lot easier for me to go, yeah, what an idiot. He just did this thing, and he's got a $300 million contract for his podcast. Well, I just made him feel like an idiot. I'm above this guy who makes a shitload more money than I do. Right.
What do you think? I mean, you're in the business of many things, but one of which is coaching coaches. Mm-hmm. And the role of a coach is to help change people's lives, thought patterns, ways to look at things. We're all in a time now where there's a lot of contention amongst families, amongst friend groups. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to change someone's mind. But what is your advice for the productive ways to go about softening disagreements, opening up channels? Because just yelling your thing and putting your study out or showing and just people yelling at each other, it's not working at all.
No.
So like, what is your strategy? What do you tell your coaches? What do you tell yourself for how to actually make meaningful change, meaningful impact in the collective or one-on-one conversations?
Yeah, well, this is good because it's not just, everyone's a coach in some sort of way. So whether someone's getting paid for coaching or not. So this goes to everybody who's in a relationship with somebody else in some sort of way. Because it's essentially, even if you're not like, hey, I'm a mindset coach or life coach or fitness coach or nutrition coach, you still have other friends that come to you and talk to you when times are hard sometimes. And really what people need right now is, and it's hard for me to say as a guy, is it's not like fixing it. It's like you need to listen to other people first. I have someone who I'm really close with, and their family is two sides, like hardcore. And you can show them all of the reasons why ivermectin has helped people, and they don't even see it because they are on the other side that sees something completely different, right? It's just a horse dewormer and all this stuff. I saw a tweet the other day. It said calling ivermectin a horse dewormer is like calling water toilet bowl liquid. It's like, yeah, it could be used for that, right? It's like, sure. But really what it is it's like the conversation that I had with them, because I think a lot of people are going through this, is really what it comes down to is I've made my decision. So if it was my mom, which my mom is not this, she highly respects my opinion. I love her for that. But if it were my mom who was like, hey, you should do, I don't agree with you taking this and you acting this way and you doing this, you should, wear a mask, or, if she took that side, if she said, hey, you have to wear a mask, you have to get a vaccine, all that stuff, I could just go, hey mom, listen, I love you. I appreciate you for giving me this. And I know that really what you're coming from is you want me to be safe, right? Like what you want is you want for me to be safe. So I'm really telling her what she wants and making sure I'm clarifying it first. And then I'm just going to literally say, what I really need from you though, is I need for you to respect my decisions and not bring any judgment in. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend who was going through this really, really bad. And to actually tell you the exact same situation, this friend was taking ivermectin and her entire family thought she was going to die from taking it. Right. So this is literally the exact situation happened last week. And I'm walking her through this whole thing. entire family thinks she's going to die from taking it because Rolling Stone put out a fake article saying that all these people are in the ER and stuff.
Yeah, it got
right?
completely debunked.
Right, for 100%, right? The hospital debunked it, and then the doctor said they hasn't worked there in 2 years that they quoted on it, right? So they see this article and think that, oh my God, she's going to die. And so they look at this and like, she's going to die if she takes this stuff. And what's funny about it too, is it's not like, this is the first time this has happened. This is just something else that's happened. It's been something that's been happening for years and years and years with this family, right? So really what it comes down to, and they kept going, well, we don't want you to take this. We don't want you to take this. We don't want you to take this. She goes, listen, it has nothing to do with ivermectin or the vaccine. It has nothing to do with this, because this conversation has happened when I wanted to go travel to Nicaragua, and you were afraid that Nicaragua is too dangerous of a place because the place that I was staying at didn't have an address, because Nicaragua doesn't have a whole lot of addresses, right? Really what it comes down to is I'm my own sovereign being. I love you. I want you. I appreciate you wanting safety for me, but also at the same time, I need to be able to make my own decisions, and I don't want judgment, because I know that if I bring judgment to you, you're not going to feel very good. If you bring judgment to me, it doesn't make me feel good. So I know you want safety for me, and I love you for that. But what I really need from you right now is just to respect my own opinions and my own decisions, because I am going to do what I want to do.
Yeah. So that's a way to create kind of like a harmonious peace,
right,
in a certain way. And super good advice. And I think really that thing you were saying about like, what is the motivation? They just want her to be safe, and really just start with what you agree with, and really anchor that in, and really begin with an agreement. Like, okay, here's our agreement. And even in this debate as it goes out at large, okay, what's the agreement? Okay, we want people to be happy, healthy, strong, and thrive. We have two different strategies for that. One is going to trust the sovereignty of the individual, trust their nutrition, health practices, trust all of that. And that's the way that we believe that people are going to be happy, strong, and healthy. Okay, the other way is get vaccinated, wear masks, stay at home, isolate from other people. Okay, well, we don't agree with that strategy. We think that strategy is putting Band-Aids on the real problems. And so, but our motivation is the same. Yeah. We want people to be happy, strong, and healthy, and thrive. So if you really like anchor back to that, that's a great starting point. Great for interpersonal dynamics, and actually, your interaction with the collective, just to start with what you agree with. And even, it doesn't matter, even the abortion debate, okay, well, we all agree that there's a time where it's wrong. There's a number of weeks where this is wrong. And we love life. We both love life. These are all the factors. Okay, how many weeks? Okay, Texas came out and said 6 weeks. Okay, well, that's not enough weeks for me. I'm more on the 8 week side. And that was an interesting thing that happened, and this is a very complicated issue. I'm not trying to get into the actual meat of the issue. I'm just using it as an example, because Texas came out and said 6 weeks is the cutoff, right? And then there's a ton of people who are like really frustrated about it. A lot of women, a lot of other people. I'm like, okay, where would you put the weeks? And most of the women who are very like angry about this were like, I'd put it at 8. I was like, okay, so it's not that far off, right. It's like not like, and meanwhile, the internet is fucking going bonkers, right? But everybody's just like, what we're talking about is there's a couple week difference here of what we're kind of figuring out. And I'm sure some people are like 0 weeks and they're whatever, everybody's beliefs are, but there's always a way like you can get to what you both agree with, and then realize that the differences are just usually differences in strategy or differences in details so many more times, but we can get all emotionally worked up and feel like we're completely on other sides of the universe when really maybe we're not. Maybe we're actually a lot closer than we think. And I believe that we are, because again, back to point A, we're all the same person living a different life. So we're all in this together. It's all of this is just delusion, thinking that we're so far apart, right and left and black and white and pro-life or pro-choice and pro-mask or anti-vax or whatever the fuck. It's like, we're really 99% on board with each other.
For sure. And it's really what it comes down to is like, can I and I think it comes a lot down to control, which is like, first time I did ayahuasca, I realized my issue was control. I had a control problem. Like, it beat me up so bad because I didn't realize I had such bad control problem. And, if I'm looking at somebody else, who am I to tell somebody what they should and shouldn't do with their body? Either way, whether that is a mask or whether it is a vaccine or whether that is an abortion. Like all I know is how I feel the correct way to take care of myself is, and I'm going to go with what I feel is right. I'm not going to let any fear come in. I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to get present with myself and be like, hey, what do I feel? Like I have a friend who's literally like, should I get a vaccine or not? I was like, well, it's completely up to you, man. It's you. Like, what does your intuition tell you?
Right.
And so I've had people that have taken it that I wouldn't think would take, but they said, hey, when I took it, I had a long meditation. I gave instruction to this thing of what I wanted to do in my body. I was like, that's actually pretty beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard somebody talking about it that way. And I respect that. Right. And so it's not about me telling somebody what they should and shouldn't do with their life, because who the fuck am I to tell anybody? Like, what if I was like, Aubrey, hey, you have to eat a burger for lunch today, right? Like you'd be like, that's ridiculous. Why is it any different when I'm trying to tell somebody else what to do with their life in any other way? It's like,
it's so much different than saying like, there's burgers available if you want one.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, I do.
I actually do want a burger. No, you're going to eat a fucking burger today, Aubrey. You know what I mean? It's like, and you're going to eat a burger
burgers, bro.
And you're going to eat a burger tonight.
Now. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to resist it. And so it's like, for me, it's like, how can I look at somebody, and I'm not a master of this in any sort of way. Like we are two imperfect individuals talking about a path that we're on trying to get better, right? So that's the beautiful thing about it. It's not like I'm like, yeah, I have love and compassion for everybody. And I, think everybody should do what they want. And like, I find myself getting stuck all the time. And that's the beautiful thing about life. And going back to like you saying like, you're not the same person at 30, so you've done ayahuasca a lot of times since. It's like, you still have things that you're working through. We all do. But what happens is we become aware of these things. And then a lot of things that I see when people start getting in the road of self-development is they become aware of stuff that they're not aware of. And now they bring judgment on top of that awareness because they're like, I should be past this. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be acting this way. And it's not like that. It's like the simplest form of where I say self-development is, and just self-improvement, self-development, whatever people want to call it, is when I was younger, something would happen to me and I'd be triggered for an entire week. Right. And I'd be pissed. Oh, I can't believe she said that to me. What a bitch. I can't believe she did this. And, I can't believe that person acted this way. And I'd carry it on for days and days and days. And then I started reading and hired coaches and going to conferences and started doing meditation and psychedelics and working on myself. And then a few years later, I went from 7 days to now I'm only triggered for 4 days. And then I work on myself for a few more years. And now it's only 1 day, and it ruins an entire day, but it doesn't ruin an entire week anymore. And then I keep working on myself a little bit more, a few years, and now it's like an hour I'm triggered. And then it's 15 minutes I'm triggered. And what we're all trying to get to, at least me personally, is the same thing happens, I'm not triggered. And it means that there's nothing externally that can mess with this internally. And that's really what it is. It's not about this thing happens and then I become judgmental of myself. It's like, there it is again. I always say it's like, when you go to a party and there's that one person that's like the friend of the friend, you're like, oh, fuck, they're here again. Like, you were hoping they weren't going to show up. It's like, that's what that trigger is for you. Oh, that fucking guy showed up again. And it's like, I'm probably going to leave the party early this time. Right. That's kind of what self-development's like, where it's like, all right, I'm going to stop going down this route.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we're all messed up. We're all trying to get better. It's like, why would I judge somebody else's path on what they decide to do? Because I'm just going to try to see if I can give them some sort of compassion for what they're going through. And I don't think that anybody needs another opinion of what they think that they should do.
The point about being triggered is, I think a lot of times people think, well, I don't get triggered because I'm just so not available. I have so much armor of the false self around me that you can't even touch the real self. And it's the real self 100%. That gets fucking really mad anyway. So fuck it, and you become insulated and isolated. And no matter what someone says, it just kind of, it maybe sticks in the thick tree bark, protecting like the heart of the tree, which is your true self. But that's not the way. The way is that you're on another vibrational level where you're just at another octave. So anything that's coming at this lower octave, it just passes right through the tree. You're like, oh, you were shooting that dart at me? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not here. It's like punching a ghost. You're like, whoops.
Yeah.
Sorry, not here. Not here to be wounded. I know myself and I love myself. And these reflections, because that's the hard part, what we really suffer from is we come to know ourselves partly through the reflections of other people. And the more reflections of other people we have, the harder it is to transcend that, because we're constantly getting reflections back from other people who are looking at us and don't see through this shiny exterior. And so we're looking in all of these mirrors, and then we get addicted to looking in these mirrors, just like we get addicted to looking in the mirrors in our bathrooms or on our Instagram page, how many likes we got. We look at all of these other mirrors, and then we start to lose the true gnosis of who we are. And that's the place of real invincibility, where we can't be vanquished, is when we really know who we are, and we just know that all of these reflections are all some form of illusion. Like, it's very rare that anybody's going to see us completely, and hopefully we have a couple people like that, who like really see us, real intimacy, real intimacy. Like, fucking wow, we see each other. That's why in Avatar, I love that the highest thing that they could say to each other, the Na'vi people, was, "I see you." It's like, fuck, yeah. Like, that's the thing. But it's very rare, mostly because we can hardly see ourselves, first of all. So there's delusion number one. We can't even see ourselves straight because we have too much judgment of ourselves, and we've taken on too much conditioning from the world. And then we expect some other person who can't even see themselves to see us perfectly when we don't even see ourselves.
100%.
No fucking way. So like, ultimately we're in this hall of mirrors. And that's what makes it hard. So someone changes their opinion of us, and then we're like, oh God, I don't like what that mirror is showing me. But really the path is, if we really, really know who we are, then all of the mirrors don't matter. It's just like literally walking through a funhouse. We're like, oh wow, this one makes me look fat. This one makes me look skinny. This one makes me look really tall. Look at this. I look like a badass. Oh, this fucking Instagram filter makes me look like a gangster. This Instagram filter makes me look like I have perfect skin and big eyes and all cute. Like, we just know that we're applying a filter, but we're not lost in the filters. We like know who we are. And that's the place.
It's it's interesting, because if you would have talked to me like 15 years ago, there was a point when I literally thought to myself, because you're talking about putting the armor up, I literally thought to myself, like, am I like completely unempathetic to other people? And there was a point where I was like, maybe I'm like psychotic or something like that. Like, I don't feel anything from other people. And what I realized, that the people who think that they literally don't feel anything and they're not empathetic to other people around them, I think are actually usually feel the most. They're just trying to block it off.
Yeah, they're really sensitive people.
100%. I've found, like, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, if you would have come up to me, I would have been like, yeah, no, I don't feel other people's energy. I don't really have a whole lot of empathy for other people, because I was so closed off. I've come to realize I'm about 12 seconds from crying at all points in time. Like, I'm so close to crying all the like I tear up in movies more than my girlfriend does, 100%, right? And then there's a part of me that's like, I got to stop. And then I'm like, well, why do I have to stop? Like, who said, like, where did that come from where I have to stop? And I realized I got it from my mom. My mom's very emotional too. Like, she's about 12 seconds from crying at all points in time. So a lot of the people that are, if this connects with anybody that's out there, where you feel like, oh yeah, but I'm just tough and I don't understand, I don't feel this with people. I've said this to people that I've coached before in the past. One lady that's in my mastermind specifically, she's like, and we've been working together for over a year. She's like, yeah, like, I don't feel people. I don't understand it. She's, I'm just so hardcore. I don't understand what people are going through when they bring in all of this like soppy shit. And now you talk to her and she's like, I feel it. I get it. And I said to her at one point in time, I said, the reason why you don't think you feel anything is because you're actually trying not to feel the most. And she's like, oh shit. Yeah, I think you're right. And there was like something inside of her that made her go, yeah, you've got to protect this, because whatever this feeling is, it's not safe. There was something that happened to her when she was younger that wasn't safe to show her emotion. And then, so for me, like, the longest time, and this is something that literally popped in my head like 3 weeks ago. I was thinking about it. I was out on my back porch and I was like, why was it so, like, why do I have to feel like I have to close off my emotions? Why do I feel like I can't cry? Why do I feel like I can't be this way? And I was thinking about it and I was like, when was the first time that I had to disconnect from my emotions? And I asked myself that question. I sat with it for a while. And I remember, I don't know if it was the first time, but a memory popped up in my head. I was probably 8 years old. And it was when my mom and my sister were on the couch over to the left and I was in my dad's chair to the right. And something happened. I don't even know what happened, but I started to cry. And they thought that it was a fake cry, like I was putting it on so that I would get, they would feel bad for me.
So it was manipulative. Yeah.
Right. They thought I was manipulating. I wasn't. And then I remember running off to my sister's room, and because I didn't have a room, I slept on the couch when I was a kid and until about 10 years old. And so I ran in my sister's room, and as I was running away, I could hear them being like, he's so dramatic. And I remember crying on the bed and thinking to myself, I'm not faking this. Why don't they understand me? Like, I'm not trying to get any, but like, why is this wrong? What I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, that could have been the place where I shut off.
Right.
And then I learned, you can't, with two of the people who are, supposed to be there to protect you, if they can't even accept this emotional side of you, nobody in this fucking world's going to be able to accept that side of you.
Yeah.
So I've got to build up a false identity, and that's what I built. And so now I'm like trying to pick pieces of those bricks away so that I don't have this wall in front of me anymore. And if I do cry, I cry, but there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what's crazy about it too, is so many times, I'm sure you've seen it before in your mastermind, man, where somebody will say, they'll start crying and then they'll say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Why the fuck do you need to say you're sorry for crying? You don't say you're sorry when you laugh, do you?
Sure.
It's like, it's a natural human emotion. Why is it wrong for you to sit there and cry? I'm going to hold space and let you process whatever you need to process, because it's coming
a gift. It opens up a level of vulnerability. It's like all of a sudden the container gets really rich. In an ayahuasca circle, the first person, like there's all the shares, and then that first person shares that hard shit, that deep shit. And then every share after that goes into the real shit. It like takes that first person to break into it. And then, if you're one of the people that actually came through before that, you're like, damn, my share was lame.
Like I didn't say what I wanted to say.
I didn't get into the deep stuff. I just talked about the visions that I saw or like whatever else. And now this whole container is set and I have shit that's on my heart that's really there that I didn't bring up, so it's a gift. One of the techniques that I use actually, when I'm coaching other people in Fit for Service or wherever, is in that moment that you're talking about, which is really, key. And I love that question that you're asking, which is, when was the first moment that you felt this? And if people can bring up, what age was it? Usually I'll ask what age first. What age was the first age that you started feeling like your emotions weren't safe, or your emotions, that people around you couldn't hold them? And they'll say, 7. Okay, think of an event that happened when you were 7, go through that. And then they'll get to that. And then I'll say, all right, so, see your 7-year-old self. And then I'll go through like kind of like a guided meditation. Like, what does that 7-year-old need? What do they need? And, for you, assuming it'd be like, well, they need to be seen. They need to be, saying like, I see you. I know it's hard. Like, again, like that.
I was going to say the voice.
The
That's
voice.
what they needed.
They needed that voice. Like, I know, sweetie. I know it's hard. But I hear you and blah, blah, blah. Like that's what that person, that version of you needed. And then sometimes there'll be like a gift exchange where I'll be like, okay, so what can you give that version of yourself, that 7-year-old something, at work? And sometimes they give something to the older version of you. And then ultimately you invite them back home. You invite that younger version back home to the self where you're at right now. It's like, okay, are they ready to come home? And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they need more coaxing, and sometimes they want to stay. Like that 7-year-old is just not ready to come home, but you'll just keep working with it. But there's something very powerful about, because as you said, there's like fractures, little fractured elements where parts of ourself get stuck. And just gently guiding them back to the tree, back to that true self tree on the straight line, the remo caspi of like the golden tree that's going straight up in the air, and like inviting that version back in to the tree trunk, I found to be really powerful.
Yeah. As you're speaking and you're talking about it, literally the voice that you heard when you were going through your ayahuasca ceremony is, I think, the voice that everybody needs to hear right now, right? Like that, like, what are most people in? And we can even talk about it. Like there's some people that are in complete fear of their life. There's other people that we're friends with that are complete fear that, society's going to completely collapse, and they're prepping just in case the apocalypse comes, right? So it's like, there's both sides of people being in complete fear of something. And so really what it comes down to is like, it's that voice of like, it's going to be okay. And what I've been trying to prep myself with, at least, is, if society does change, how can I be unattached to it? Like imagine, like, we've both done decently well in life, right? Imagine if shit does hit the fan and all of this money, these things that we've accumulated, these dollars in our bank accounts switch, and we're not able to use American dollars anymore. It's going to change a lot of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so my whole thing is like, if that did happen, I don't see it happening, but if it did, how can I be at peace with it right now, even if it did happen? Like, how can I just be unattached to it going, okay, Like I trust that the reason why I'm here is not to just, accumulate these things into a digital bank account, which are just digits on a screen. It doesn't even really exist. But I think there's something there for me. And if it does disappear, it's what was supposed to be given to me because there's something else I'm supposed to be guided to. Right. And for me, it's like, if everybody does die from COVID, it happens. How can I be unattached to it, even though it's not what I want? If the apocalypse does come and we have to be fully prepped for 6 or 12 months or whatever it is, okay, it does happen, but how can I be fully unattached to it and just be like, okay, whatever happens? And it really comes down to like the trust of like, do we actually trust that God or the universe or source has like, what's happening is what's happening for me, right? If that thing does happen, sure, we can be prepared for it, whatever side that you're on, but can we just go, you know what? It's going to be okay. Like it's going to be fine. There's some, if the society shuts down, there's no more food or something like that, there's probably some intuitive thing inside of my brain that knows how to be able to create fire from sticks. You know what I mean? There's probably something that knows how to hunt. I did get a bow and start practicing that. So I'm like, all right, I don't have to worry about ammo because I got a bunch of arrows. So you know what I mean? Like I'm going to be able to hunt for myself. There's deer that pop up in my backyard. I don't want to kill those deer, but I'll kill those motherfuckers if I need to eat. Right. Hungry. So it's like, how can I be unattached to whatever comes? I can just roll with the punches and it's going to happen.
Yeah. Collapsing those fear states is really crucial. I mean, I think it's such hell to be living in this perpetual fear. And I think that's why we draw our fears towards us, partly because a fear is a belief in something negative that's happening, right? It's, depending on how afraid we are is how much we actually believe it's going to happen. But being in this kind of purgatory, this bardo of fear is hell. Yeah. So if you can actually get to the place where you collapse the fear by putting yourself in the state where it's already happened and being like, I'm okay with it. You can dispel the fear, stop drawing it towards yourself, and be in equanimity. I think that's one of the great benefits of ayahuasca is we're all terrified of death at the start. Like that's the scariest thing of all. Well, they call ayahuasca the vine of death or the vine of souls, largely because it's going to put you in confrontation with your greatest fear, which is death. And so you have to become at peace with that. And I think that's something that's, we see like people are afraid of a variety of different things. And fear of death on one side is certainly there. And for other people are like, I'd rather die than give up my liberties and my freedoms. And like, so they're just terrified of their freedom being taken away. But then you can also point to, the Viktor Frankl understanding, which is the last of the great human freedoms, is the ability to, choose our mindset for any given circumstance, Yeah, that's not exactly the quote, but the same idea, right? So there's a way to collapse all the fears of all of the things. So no one can change the way my mind works. And if I die, I'm not really dead anyways. Like I've been there. And so then you can be at this kind of, in this peaceful place. For me, the fear, and I can get to both of those places. Obviously, death is a dispreferential reality, and getting all my freedom and sovereignty taken away is a dispreferential reality, and don't want to be in a authoritarian police state. That doesn't sound good either. But the fear that I still struggle with is really this self-generated fear of I'm not going to do enough. I'm not going to do enough. Yeah. Like I'm here with all of these resources, all of this capability, and I'm not going to do enough, and I'm going to fail my purpose. And that's the one that's like, that's the thing that's just the hardest to shake. Yeah. That's the same way. I have the same one. Like for me, it's like, are there other fears that are ancillary and they're out there? For sure. But mine is, I don't want to get to, my grandfather died at 95. I don't want to be 95 in my deathbed. Like it was beautiful. I was in the room when he died. And I had never been in the room when someone died. And that's a pretty incredible experience to go through. But the whole family came. There was nothing terrible about the death. Like he died in his sleep. I heard him take his last breath, and I was like, that's the way to go. Right. But essentially, if you look at that, it's like, okay, I don't want to get to the end and be in his situation and go, man, there's more that I could have done. Like my biggest fear is the fear of regret as well. But then it goes back to, and I think I might've said this on my podcast. I read an article or a quote that said, what if the purpose, because what you said is, did I live out my purpose in some sort of way, you said. And what makes me feel good is, what if the purpose of your life was just to simply smile at that person because that's what they needed, or to open the door for them, or to say, hey, I really like your shirt.
And that at least clicked them out of this thought of having suicide. And they go, oh, maybe life is a little bit better. And what if we're trying to make our purpose to be this huge, massive thing, and it was never supposed to be this huge, massive thing? And it's all just a game of play. And, you know, like you say, we're just pleasure monkeys. Like we're supposed to here just to experience and have this amazing thing. Like, what if the purpose was to not go in? Because I deal with this as well. Like I make shitloads of podcast episodes and try to get views because I want to help people, because I get the messages of helping them. And so I'm like, there's always that thought in my mind of who hasn't seen it that would get me, I just got this amazing message from somebody this morning, right? And this guy was talking about how he was thinking about committing suicide and all kinds of stuff. And I sent him a voicemail back through Instagram. What if there's another person like him out there that needs to hear the same episode that he heard?
Yeah.
And it's like, what if I don't get to them in time?
Right.
And how can I get my message out there more? And it's like, what if instead of thinking that way, it's just like, you know what? I've already fulfilled my purpose of being here, and all of this is just play anyways. And the way that we decide to play is through speaking into microphones and cameras. Like, that's our play. Other people's play might be a little bit different. And it's like, I come back to that of like, you've already met your purpose, you know, like you've already done, like, Aubrey, you've already changed the world the way you're supposed to. Now it's just to just have fun with it.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, it's like, all right, I can breathe again. Like when I work with my coach, like I have a coach that I work with, and one of the things that we talk about, he's like, well, you know, how does that feel? Like, what is the word for that? And I was like, there's no word whenever I work with things. Like the thing I always come back to is like, like that is what I'm trying to feel more of, because I will get myself stressed out of like, I need to go do more. I need to create more content. I need to change the world more. What purpose have I not fulfilled yet? And he's like, well, what do you want to feel? And I was like, I just want to feel, you know, because I felt like throughout a lot of my life, I felt like I'm addicted to stress. You know, like there's a lot of things that happen in my life. I think I just kind of became addicted to the feeling because those adrenaline, cortisol was ramped up in my body with stuff that happened with my dad.
Yeah, I'm super addicted.
Yeah. And so I've come to realize, like, I have searched for things unconsciously or in that deep unconscious we're talking about before, for me to become stressed. You know, like I find things for me to get stressed. I have created a conversation in my head to perpetually keep me stressed. And it fucking sucks. And what's the opposite of stress? Like that feeling of just like, surrender, let go. And so I consciously will notice myself get in that feeling of like, I'm supposed to be doing more, supposed to be creating more, like our company should be making more money. Like it's doing great, but I see so much bigger of a thing that it could be. And it's just like, all right, man, like you've already done it.
Yeah.
You know, like just relax. Everything's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I come back to also, for one, breath is the antidote to all of this anxiousness and all of this stress. You know, like it truly is. And whether you're talking to Huberman or just looking at the old pranayama, you know, wisdom that's been around for thousands of years, it really is. So getting back to my breathing, that's something that I remind myself. Deep breaths through the nose. And just like get back to that and continuing to remind myself to breathe deep through my nose into my belly, like throughout the day. That's one strategy. And then yesterday, especially with now, it feels like the world needs more from me than ever before. Before it was like, yeah, all right, spirituality, self-improvement, human optimization, like these are all valuable things, but it's like, these are valuable things in times where everything's kind of chill. But now it's like things are fucking chaotic. People are at each other's throats. There's arguments on both sides. Separation is at an all-time high. We're heading towards potentially dangerous, you know, social dynamics. So it's like, fuck, I got to do more.
Right.
And like, I had this deep meditation where I just realized like, actually all of this that I'm trying to worry about externally, like just focus that back on me. Like just start to really heal myself instead of worrying about healing the world as a slightly broken and stressed out person. Like just heal yourself, man. Like heal yourself and watch your actions and watch everything you do be a natural emanation that emanates out. Of course, I'm still going to podcast. I'm still going to do everything, but it only works from a healed place. So just fuck all this. Cause I kept trying to think, like I have a couple different intentions for this meditation. One, I'm going to figure out what I can do for myself. And two, I'm going to figure out what I can do for the world. And I just got stuck on one. And every time I'd go to the world, you know, the guidance would come back and say, like, no, stay with intention one. Like, focus on yourself. And then the rest, like the world, the stuff you do for the world will all sort itself out. But you have to like heal yourself as, you know, the ocean in a drop rather than the drop in the ocean. Like, recognize that you hold the collective, like really trust your state of inner being. And if you heal yourself completely, you heal the world completely.
So funny, because literally right before we started this podcast, we're talking about coaches. And I'm like, yeah, most people become coaches because they're actually trying to heal themselves by healing other people.
Right.
And we're fucking literally the exact same thing. Like totally. We literally, our issue is we want to do more when in reality we should do more for other people. In reality, we should just do more for ourselves, and that will heal other people more. Yeah. Right. I'm curious, is there ever a time when you felt like you weren't doing enough? Like if that's the feeling,
my whole life.
Is there a moment where you're like, fuck, I like that you remember when you were younger of like this like visceral feeling of like, I'm not doing enough, and that kind of like just clicked in and it's been perpetuating since?
There was a lot of moments that was just such a constant state. It's hard to figure out where it really happened. I think I can though, actually, now that I think about it. So I went on a family trip to Italy with my parents I was a freshman, so 9th grade. And we went to visit the dungeons of the Inquisition. And it coincided with me moving to Texas from California. And Texas back then in 93 or whatever was like far more, I guess it was more like 96, 95. Far more Christian than my California upbringing, you know? So I was in like a new kind of much more Christian reality. And then I went to go to Italy, and I went to the dungeons of the Inquisition, and it was fucking horrifying, like absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
Like 70% of all of the torture devices had to do with someone's genitals, and the other ones they still haunt me to this day. There's this one thing that like, you like shackle people in this particular position that like breaks your back and bursts your hamstrings, you know? And I'm like, to like leave someone in that for days until they die. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like awful. And the Inquisition was of course out there, and it was led by the church, and they were finding, quote, heretics, people who didn't believe in the church or whoever they didn't fucking like, and then torturing them in this way, you know? So people who were into the plant medicines of the time, the quote, witches who are just out there healing people and fucking working with energy and whatever, or anybody who had any different beliefs. Horrified by that. Came to Texas, and then I saw what capital R religion, of course it's not to that level anymore, but it was so many people were just shackled and riddled with so much guilt. We're coming into our own sexual, you know, our sexual spring in high school. And there were so many people who would like have an experience or start to masturbate and be just crushed with shame and like, or like be with their lover and for the first time. And it was just like, just awful things. Like this girl was just sobbing to me because she had sex for the first time, lost her virginity, and her religious boyfriend was like, you whore, how did you tempt me to have sex? You know, like all of this shit. And I was like, this is fucked. So, and I was always like a really deep thinker and philosopher from early, like always exploring like big issues in writing. At that point, it was like, I have to like attack and dismantle capital R religion. You know, like I can do it. Like I can fucking do it.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And, but I think that was the moment where I felt this like deep calling and, deep calling, like I have to fix these problems in the world. Now, of course, I'm actually much closer to being a Christian. I have a deep affinity with Christ, at least the mystic, Gnostic understanding of Christianity now. So my, you know, vehemence towards religion has really changed because I have deep admiration of the mystical truths of all of these religions, whether it's the Kabbalah or whether it's Gnosticism or whether it's like the true, you know, Ted Decker interpretation of the meanings of Christ or whatever else it might be. So that still isn't there with me, but that was the first moment where I felt like there was a big problem in the world and there was an infinite amount of things that I could do that would still never be enough.
For sure.
You know? And so I think that was that first feeling of like, fuck, there's a big problem, and no matter how much I do, it'll never be enough, but I got to just keep doing the maximum.
Yeah. It's hard because you're talking about trying to, obviously you have a much better relationship with it now, but you're talking about trying to tackle the biggest thing that there is in this world, right? Like Christianity is bigger than the United States as far as how many people are into it and all that stuff. And I'm the same way as you, where I tell people I'm redeveloping my relationship with Jesus, right? Because there was a long time where I was like, fuck that guy, right? Like just right. the word God or the word Jesus would internally make me be like agitated, right? And I went through like my own journey as well of like, my mom was raised Catholic. She went to Catholic school with her, one of 6 kids when she was younger. So then I went to, Catholic church, which had some PTSD from Catholic church. I think most people do, because my whole thing was like, no matter what, I always felt like I was doing something wrong because I was always being watched, right? So I'm 4, 5, 6 years old, trying to think everything that I'm doing, is this what God wants me to do or is this wrong? Like, and so it's this constant thought in the back of my head, like I say, a lot of people have this when they turn like 18 years old and they leave the house, they don't realize that they're constantly being like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Like they think their parents are always looking over their shoulder, always trying to prove their parents right or wrong, or whatever it is they wanted from them. But for me, it was like, I got out of being religious. And then in about 2010, I was like, let me try to start going back to church. And I play guitar. So I started playing guitar at this church, which made me start going more. And then I got out of it and I was like, yeah, when we die, we'll just become worm food. Like I became very close to atheist, I would say. And then there was just a point where I was like, I feel like there's something. And then the first time I did ayahuasca, I was like, oh, this is that something. And I'm in that place where that something totally is. Like I'm here, like I'm in the inner workings of God, whatever that is. And I think there's a lot of people that have trauma around religion in general, just parents and the way that I mean, there's a lot of people that religion's really good for. And there's a lot of people that religion's really bad for. It just depends on who the person is and the way that it works. And my very first ayahuasca ceremony, I remember going into it because I was like, I need ayahuasca to show me that, because my family is very Christian still, like they're hardcore Christian. I'm very much on the other side of like, well, I'm open to everything. And I think, there's a lot of stuff that we could learn from all religions. Yep. And I got that way because the very first ayahuasca ceremony I did, after I went through all hell, and then it got beautiful when I finally released and just let go, and it was giving me all of the downloads to the universe. I said, what religion is right? And the very right away came through, all of them. They're all right. It's just like ice cream. It's just all different flavors, but you're still eating ice cream, right? Yep. And I was like, so what's the point of, I was like, so, and the whole idea that I had was like, so what's the point of having all these different ones? And it's like, because different people need different things, and it's like the Ram Dass talks about this guru where he would go up to one person and he would say something, and he'd go up to some person and say the exact opposite of that one thing. And someone's like, this guy's, he's a charlatan, he's fake, he's saying all these different things. And someone goes up to him and goes, why'd you say this thing to that person? You said something completely opposite to the other person. He goes, because when you're walking down a road, some people veer off to the right and some people veer off to the left. And to get them both back on the road, they both need different directions, because one of them has to turn left and one of them has to turn right. And I was like, oh, all religions are right? And I was like, holy shit. Then maybe me judging my mom for being so religious is ridiculous, because that's what she needs to get one step closer to enlightenment. And whatever my sister needs is something different. And then whatever this person needs who's Muslim needs something different. It's like, how could I possibly judge somebody else? Because what they've been given and what they're following is what makes them feel like it's right for the next step in their soul. Same way that you and I, it might be meditation and psychedelics and connecting with other people and journaling and reading and that type of stuff. It's just the next level for all of us is somewhere out there, and it might be religion, or it might be just your own path that you follow on your own, or you might be connecting with other people in masterminds who have the same vision as you, and you start to create almost like, you're not creating your own church, but it's almost like another church where it's like you get around people who believe the same as you, and it makes you feel like, oh, I'm finally understood. And I think that's where my stress came from when I was younger, is that I always felt like I was being watched. I always felt like I was never right. And I always felt like I was going to hell no matter what I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all religions are right at their core essence, but they've been manipulated and bastardized. People fucked them up. Yeah. It's like what was originally ice cream has now become some fucking sludge made by some factory designed to profiteer off other people and become the middleman and create these mechanisms of control. And that's, I think, where everything got twisted. And really, the God that I understand says, I love you no matter what, and you can't do it wrong. It's not, and then the devil is like, you're always fucking up and you're always doing it wrong. It's the opposite, right? And so I think there's been this huge conflation, like fear God of all the things you were going to fear in the world. Like that's the last thing you should fear, 100%. But it's flipped the world upside down. And I think that's the nastiest trick of the devil or resistance. I try not to anthropomorphize and use these names, but that force has taken the seat of the divine, and it just completely undermines, like the fact that people were torturing people in the name of God, or killing people in the name of God, or punishing, judging, when God's like, I love you no matter what, and you can't do it. Like that's the real God, but everything got inverted. Yeah. So it's in this like dark upside down world prism that we've been in. But if you really like look through and peer through all the way through, you'll see that there's the kernel of the divine. There's the kernel of source in everything. Yeah.
Well, when you say that, it's funny because I think it's Alan Watts that says it, where it's like what we do, we grow up in, and I see it when I have friends that have kids, right? Like if you have a friend who's got a kid, like their God is their parents. Like just think about being 1-2 years old, and there's this massive being that literally provides you all of the safety, all of the food and the water and love that you need. It's like our gods of our universe, up until we realize what God is, are our parents. And then we grow up and realize that our parents are just people, and they are flawed in many ways. So what we do is we take this flawed idea of our parents being God and place that onto the God, and think, oh yeah, well, he's going to send me to eternal damnation, and I'm going straight to hell. And that's the thing that like I always got in trouble when I was in Catholic school, because I was like, if God is love, like why does he want to send me to this place that sounds like shit? Like I don't want to go, like this sounds terrible.
And philosophy of religion in college, one of the great things that I remember is like, if you're going to worship a God, it has to be at least as good as the best person you know. Like otherwise don't fucking worship that thing. Right. And like the best person I know would never that's cruel and unusual punishment. You're talking about a lifetime getting licked by flames.
Eternity.
That's
lifetimes on lifetimes on lifetimes.
Fucking eternity. Like that is evil. Yeah. That's evil. So don't worship that one. That's a demon. Yeah. Like that's a fucking demon. Yeah. Like Hieronymus Bosch paintings, like that's some demonic shit. There's nothing about God in that, because it has to be at least as good as the best of us.
For sure. At least
far beyond. That's the fucking bar. That's the minimum. Beyond
which you can comprehend that person even being, right? So it's like, if you look at, if there's only two things in this world, there's love and there's fear, and everything comes from love and fear, right? And God is synonymous with love in all religions that you look at. So if something is the epitome of love, it doesn't even know fear, and it doesn't even know how to put fear into you. It is that voice of like, it's going to be okay. I'm here for you at all points in time. It's like, there is no way that God, and I don't know how at 5 years old, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like this feels so wrong. Like this thing loves me so much. How could it possibly do that? It's like nothing that you could do could ever, and we spoke of this before. It's like Jesus, it's like, no matter what you could do, I'm still going, like you're already forgiven before you even do the thing that's wrong. Yep. Like, when have we ever felt in our lives that there's one person that we're just fully forgiven with, no matter what happens? We might know one person, but very few people know anybody that you can come to and there's no judgment and you don't feel any different, no matter what you say to them. And that they're like your safe space, that they're not going to, turn you into a bad person for what you did. And that's, when we go back to triggers that we were talking about a few minutes ago. So my girlfriend and I, when we go to bed, we have a routine that we'll say one thing that we like about each other every night. It's just like how we end it, even if we're in a fight. And it's usually like, all right, well, let me tell you what I like about you. You know what I mean? It's like, we at least got to end it that way.
You had pretty hair today.
You didn't piss me off as much as you could have, right? It's like we'll still force ourselves to say it. And usually at least makes me feel better, where I'm like, I can feel the tension, then the tension kind of subsides a little bit. And, last night, so I'll tell you what happened. On Saturday, she comes in, I'm watching football. She comes in and she's like about to cry. And she's like, and I was like, what? I was like, thought something with the dogs or something, right? Like, something's not right.
Yeah, sure.
She goes, I don't even know how it happened. And I was like, just tell me what it is. What is it? And she goes, I broke your watch. And I'm like a real big watch guy. And she broke my Rolex. And she knocked it off of the counter.
She was just channeling her cat.
She just knocked. She's like, fuck this thing. But it somehow fell perfectly so that it shattered the glass completely on my Rolex, right?
Wow.
If this was 6 years ago, it would have been, and this is what we said when we were going to bed. She's like, I liked that when I said it to you, you didn't freak out. 5 years ago, Rob would have been like, what the fuck are you doing? Right? Like, because really what it comes down to, we had this conversation in bed, was I would have wanted to hurt you because I was hurt. But I could already see that you were hurt by the way that you came into it. And so the worst thing for me to do is try to hurt you more when I can already tell there's hurt. And so I was like, it's okay. It's no big deal. Like, we took it into the shop yesterday. It's just getting sent off. I'll get it back in 2 months. Right. But that was me trying to at least be a little bit better of, no matter what you did, sure, I love this watch, but it's a fucking thing. Right. But you're forgiven before it even happened in the first place. Right. And if somebody crashes my car, it's like, you're forgiven before it happens in the first place. And so it's like, how can we get to the point where what would have triggered us, we can forgive people no matter what? I'm not trying to say I'm any sort of perfect being, because there was still inside of me, I was like, what fucking watch, right? Like, I was like, there's no reason to bring that out. And so it's like, that's stepping more into the place that we should be of, okay, you did this thing. It's not the outcome that I would have wanted, but it's not going to change the love that I feel for you. Because how crazy is that to be in a romantic relationship with somebody and they think that something happening to a thing can make me feel differently about them?
And also what's even deeper and more fucked up is that people get angry at people, not for their intentions, but for the consequences of some action, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way she was trying to break your watch.
No.
Not any stretch of the imagination. She was horrified that she broke, and she feels terrible herself. She's already self-punishing.
Right.
She broke your fucking watch.
Yeah.
If someone crashes your car, I guarantee they feel awful. And if they don't, that's a fucking sociopath. And you should probably not be friends with them anyways, right? But nonetheless, we'll get mad for an accident, and or for intentions that weren't there. And this comes up in relationships too, like where, Vylana and I have been moving through different traumas that she's had. She's always had her boyfriends who've been lying and cheating. And she found out on 2 different birthdays of her that her boyfriend had impregnated another woman, like deep fucking gnarly shit, right? So there'll be different situations that'll come up where she'll like plant that timeline onto me and I'll be like, yo, like, this isn't this, maybe I've said some comment or done something. I'm like, you have to look at my intention. Do you think I would really try to hurt you? Or do you think look deeper, and even beyond just an accident? Because we do that with accidents. That happened with our cats the other day, and Vi caught that because we were in this conversation about intention is the thing that fucking matters. Of course, if you're like careless or whatever, you could be reminded of like, just be a little bit more mindful of as you're moving through areas with fragile things, be mindful of the fragile things. Things are valuable, blah, 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 whatever. But like our cats are irresistibly attracted to trash, including tinfoil. And I made a hot chocolate for our friends that's staying at the house, and I put tinfoil on the top. So the cat was like, oh, great, trash. And like pulls on the tinfoil, pulls the hot chocolate off the counter right in front of us. It splashes on Vi's pants and shoes as it happens. She's like, our cat's name's Cyrano, like, Cyrano! And, gets mad. like Cyrano intentionally, maliciously fucking sabotaged.
This will look good on you, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. And then she caught herself. She's like, oh man, that's that shadow thing that we learn. We knock over a dish and our dad yells at us, or like we intended to do that. And when, of course, Cyrano didn't do that. I never intended to do that, but it's these patterns. And we're like really grateful that we're starting to unpack all of these things where if you really look at the intention, like there's no blame to be had. But even still, and then there's the other level of that Christ consciousness. So one is very practical, like just look at the intentions first before you even allow yourself to get worked up and angry. Like, did someone really mean to hurt you?
Right.
It's very rarely that someone means to hurt you, but sometimes someone will mean to hurt you. And then can you forgive them then too, because we've all been in that place where we've been fucking pissed off and we've shot a dart. We've thrown a little dart, a little blow dart of venom, and we've tried to hurt somebody with a word, with some action. We've all been times, and that's forgivable too. And like, that's the lesson of like true forgiveness. But there's a lot of ground that we can make up of just actually understanding culpability.
Yeah.
Like if someone's not trying to do something, it's not their fault. But even if they did, we've all been there too.
For sure.
You're also forgiven.
And it's kind of like, and if I go back to it, it's like, I probably should have put my watch away.
Totally.
So it's like,
totally.
Did I take a shower and leave it out? Yeah. Have I left it out there many times? Yeah. But could I put it on my bedside? Like, so at the same time, it's like, I've heard Tom Bilyeu talk about this. We're taking responsibility for everything in your life, where he said, the example that he gives, I haven't heard it in years, but he says, if my wife is driving and she's at a stoplight and she's just sitting there, it's a beautiful day, and she gets hit by an asteroid and killed, is it my fault? And people are like, no, it's not your fault. And it's like, no, it is my fault. And everyone's like, that doesn't make, like, how could you possibly, it's an asteroid. Like, what are you going to do about an asteroid? And he's like, well, I know that there is a foundation that's called the Near Earth Asteroid, whatever it is, where they actually, research all of these near Earth asteroids that are going to be coming by and these comets and all that stuff. He goes, I've known they exist for years. I've never donated $1 to them. What if I could have donated some money to them and it would have helped save my wife's life? So really start to think deeply as, is it possible that I can take responsibility for everything in my life? Because that's what it comes down to a lot, is that people won't take responsibility, and they're so quick to blame everybody else for everything versus going like, hey, how could this have been my fault? How could it have been my fault? Yeah, I probably could have put my watch away. That probably would have been a good idea. I don't ever put my watch away because I wear it every day. So it's just like, it's always out. And it's like, I have a watch winder for it. I could put it away. I haven't put it away in like 3 months, and look at what happened. So it's like, is there a lesson that's in everything? And the lesson could be, hey man, you need to pick your shit up more.
I think one of the reasons why we are afraid to take responsibility is because we're so afraid of our judge. Like if we take responsibility, then we're subject to the punishment of the judge. We're always trying to be exculpable, always trying to be, no, it wasn't my fault. I was in a hurry. I was busy. I was fucking busy. I've done this many times, like whatever. Because what are we doing that? We're like pleading our case to this tyrant that lives in our own home of our mind, this tyrant of the judge. It's like, you should have blah, 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 and now you're not worthy of love because of this. Yeah. But if we can soften the edges of that judge, change the judge to the loving coach, it's like, it's okay, I know you did this, and that loving parent rather than this tyrannical judge that we have in our own mind, then we can start to take responsibility for stuff. Because then we're not trying to come up with excuses and come up with reasons why we were justified in doing what we did. I'm justified in saying what I did because blah, 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 blah. When really it's all kind of pleading our case to this figurehead of the judge that we have
doesn't even exist in the first place.
It's just a fiction.
Yeah.
It's been reflected to us by the world because the world's judged us in that way. So we've created, what I've realized is we create a judge in our own mind harsher than the harshest judge we've ever experienced to prevent us from being subject to that judge. I understand why we have it. It just doesn't serve us. Like, again, Vailana had a really, really intense authoritarian parent, step parent, and fucking ruthless. Like, listen to this music, you're grounded for a year. A year, right? Wow. So she developed a judge that was harsher than that. And also the mechanisms of like how to get out of it, because it was insane. Like you have that kind of insane. But she developed a judge that was harsher than the harshest judge she had. My dad had a really strong judge. The punishments weren't that harsh, but he would remove love, which felt like death for me anyways, So we developed this judge that's harsher than the harshest judge we've experienced in life. And then that becomes our thing, which is always a tyrant, because we're always going to experience some kind of tyrant. And I say that in a loving way. It's not their fault. I'm not like judging them for being that. They've had their own tyrants. Sure. And in my dad's case, he certainly did a hell of a lot of work. I mean, his father was like fucking Franz Kafka novel level, like awful. And, he did his best, and everybody's doing their best.
For sure.
But nonetheless, like we create that, and then we have to live with that in our home until we confront that thing and really start to unravel it. And then we can actually then start to take responsibility and be like, oh yeah, I could have put that watch away. I could have been nicer. I could have said this in a different way. I could have opened my heart a little bit more to you. I could have been more compassionate. I could have, and then we're really like able to make progress, because we're not trying to defend our position. We're just like, oh yeah, I could do more, and I can do more, and I will, and we'll make this even fucking better.
For sure. Well, it's like, there's a video Will Smith had one time, and he said, what happened to you is not your fault, but whatever you got from it is your responsibility. So it's like, what's interesting is you look at your grandfather to your father to you, it's none of those things that happened to you are your fault in any sort of way, but what you do with it is your responsibility. Because I'm assuming you guys will probably have kids one day, and you don't want to pass that, right? So what's cool about the work that we put into ourselves is my goal is not to pass any of my past traumas from my parents onto them. And so it's like, if you look at your grandfather to your father to you, you're working through to make sure that this doesn't go again.
Yeah.
Like for me, I was very aware of what happened with my dad. Like my dad was an alcoholic because, my grandfather, my dad walked into the room after he heard a gunshot and saw his dad had just shot himself in the mouth with a shotgun at 12 years old. Right. And I'm like, of course you're going to have trauma from that. I didn't have anything that bad. So none of those things is my fault. Like my grandfather doing that's not my fault. My father becoming an alcoholic and not overcoming his demons is not my fault. But it is my responsibility to make sure that I don't become an alcoholic and this doesn't get passed on to my children.
Yeah.
And really what it comes down to is us just taking our own responsibility for ourselves and going, you had this, I had this, Valana had this. And it's like, there's all these things that happen, but we're putting in this work because we care enough for the next generations coming up that we don't want to pass it on to them. And we also just care enough for ourselves, I guess you could say, to make sure that we get past this so we feel better of our normal operating, right? Because I know that if I had been trying to do what I do now at the scale that I do now and not done all of the work I've done on myself, it would have been a complete explosion, implosion, whatever it might be with myself. And so really what it comes down to is, how can we take responsibility for everything? You can call it blame if you want to. Like I can blame myself for the watch, and I can take full responsibility for it, right? Probably make my girlfriend more excited to hear me say like, hey, that was all my fault, because I make her feel better as well, right? But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to pass it on. And I also don't want to not just pass it on to my kids. I don't want to pass it on to anybody that I come in contact with, because that energy that still exists from it, if I hold on to it, is going to be passed on to other people in some sort of way, which goes back to your ayahuasca ceremony of like who you could be if you release that thing and got back to like the true self is too much for you to even handle, like seeing it, because the way that would impact every person that you come in contact with could completely change everybody else around you.
Yeah, for sure. There's two things that I want to go back to that you said. One is that little ritual that you have with your girlfriend. Interestingly, it's something I started doing with my wife as well, where we try to pick something that either we really appreciated that they did throughout the day, or something that made us feel really loved. Like this thing, made me feel really loved, or this thing, it made me feel I really appreciated this thing. And sometimes there's two things, sometimes just one thing. And then we set an intention for the day. We haven't made it like a pattern that we do every night, but we started it in the ayahuasca, because of course, going to do ayahuasca as a couple, like lots of shit comes up.
I'm sure.
And I like have so much admiration for what she was able to move through. Like a lifetime of challenge, she was able to confront head on and overcome it. It was just incredibly beautiful to see. But of course, we had to hold that together. And so we started this practice to just anchor to the positive. And that's, I think, one really important thing that we can do is pick these little anchor points, because we're anchoring back to love and appreciation
for sure
before bed every night. And that sets us up for a positive day. And then we also try to set an intention for the next day of how we're going to show up for each other and how we're going to. And it's a beautiful practice. So finding little anchor points and intentions and then making those habits, I think, is great. The other thing is I've been kind of feeling like, like I could really use a coach myself. And you mentioning as well, you're a coach, great coach, and you're like my coach. And I was like, fuck, well, if Rob's doing it, like, I for sure should do it as well.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm going to do. And I think that's something that, even for those people listening who are, really conscious, reading the books, doing the work, there's something about having, even if it's a voice that's reiterating stuff that you already know, but they're going to say it in a different way. They're going to reflect it in a different way. And it's almost like we get coach deaf to our own internal
For sure.
coaching mechanisms, but having somebody else say it and having a little bit of that accountability, knowing you're going to talk to them next time and they're going to ask you about it. It just seems really helpful. So, you know, it's just hearing you talk today has reinforced those two different things. All right, keep up this practice with Vi of doing this every night. Yeah. And then I'm gonna come off this meeting and I'm gonna call up and I'm gonna set up a coach.
Yeah. It's the first thing of saying something, because we both love words of affirmation, but we could both be better at it.
Yeah.
You know? And nothing makes me feel better than being appreciated by somebody else. Mm-hmm. You know, like gifts are cool. Like if you look at the 5 love languages, they're all cool. But like for me, I do love when someone just says something nice about me. Right. And so it's nice to end and I sleep really well. Maybe it's because of the fact that I go into it with like this feeling of appreciation right before I go to bed. She sleeps really well too. You know, so that's part of it where it's just like, we all could be better at finding the good in people and saying that out loud to them. Right? Because I can look at someone and think something. I can look at her and think, oh my God, I really like, you know, the way she looks right now. I look like what she's wearing. For a long time, I would just think it and never say it. And I gotta say it. People need to hear these things from me. So it helps in that way. The second thing with a coach is, first off, I always tell people who are coaches, how can a coach people and not have a coach? You know, like it doesn't for me to preach that you should have a coach and not have a coach doesn't make any sense. And the second thing is like, it took me a while to find somebody because I couldn't find somebody that I felt was on my level, not in a bad, like saying that in a narcissistic way, but like I needed somebody to challenge me. And I needed somebody who, what I really want to work on is the way that we've been talking about, is showing up with more compassion, more love, and loving people. So someone that was like that had like the full integration of like feminine and masculine. Cause I'm really good at the masculine. The feminine is what I'm trying to work on, like a little bit softer side of myself. And this person ended up being the great boundary or a great bridge between the two of them. So there was that. And then also I was just like, you know, and I'll fully tell everybody, like my coach is $10,000 a month, right? And we only get 2 calls. One of them's an hour and a half. We get 2 calls every other week that are an hour and a half and then 20-minute check-in sessions, right? But
how often are the 20-minute check-in sessions?
So I talk to him every week. Yeah. But one of them, every other week it switches. So hour and a half, then 20 minutes, then an hour and a half, and then 20 minutes. And then there happens to be some we'll call it expanded things that we do with substances. Snap. So, you know, whatever that, everyone can think whatever they want to at that, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter, so I'm not dropping his name. So there is that as well that helps, because you get to a certain point where you feel like you just need help, right? Yeah. Like people who are alcoholics get to a point where hopefully they get to a point where they're just like, I need help. And, you know, I've gotten to a point where it's like, I feel like I've gotten to a point that's really good. I love everything around me. But like I said to you, I said to him, where it's like, I feel this chronic underlying stress, you know, like I feel it and I don't know where it's coming from. Like I've done so much work on myself. I'm trying to, and you know, so it's like, I'm trying to get better at this. I'm trying to get better at this. I'm trying to get better at this. And the amount of blind spots that I have for someone who literally journals every fucking day, you know, like is wild. And to realize that there's still so many blind spots. And it's just, for me, it's like the reason why you go into a psychedelic journey is to work on yourself. Like, and so why would I not be working myself every week and have this practice with somebody who also holds me accountable? Like if you look at my schedule, it's like, I'm a busy dude. Like I've got a whole lot of things happening, right? Like I'm super busy. So I will put my like certain tasks that would be improvement on me and working on me, and the feeling of like, you know, he sent me a guided meditation that he made after doing 12-hour session with him of things that came up and things I needed to work on. And that's what I listen to every single morning, of having that space where it's just like, I can wake up and I can give myself a morning routine. I'll go through the morning routine, but then there's also like, what is the next thing that I'm working for, and who's the person that's going to be holding me accountable to make sure that it happens? So like I talked to him right before I came here, and he was like, you know, how did your meeting with Lauren go? Right. Cause we've did weekly meetings for a while, and then we're like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Like we meet, we talk about things. So he gave us this whole, you know, questions, answers, journaling way to talk through things. He's like, how did it go? You know, the fact that I know it's on my schedule, it's on her schedule, and it's also on his schedule. Yeah. That I need to fucking do, and it can't be pushed off anymore, is now holding both of us accountable to actually making sure that it gets done. Yeah. And that's the work that we need to And it's, it's like someone who's like, hey, send me your meals that you ate today. If
Right.
I'm gonna need to check your macros and all of that
Right.
stuff, you need someone sometimes, not always, but for me at this point in my life, I need somebody who can hold me to a high level of accountability, because I know the next level I want to get to. I just can't see some of the blind spots, and he's been incredible for that.
Yeah. I know who I'm going to reach out to as well.
Yeah. You need someone that's you need someone who's you're at a level that you need someone who's a fucking wizard.
We mentioned him in this bio. It's Peter Crone.
Yeah.
I've gotten my 3 free sessions on my 3 podcasts that I've done with him, and they've been great.
Yeah.
And
you cried every time.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And he's a fucking master, so I'm going to finish this podcast and I'm going to reach out to him, and it's going to be fucking expensive. He's not cheap.
I know. I looked it up. Yeah. I was going to hire him before I hired this other guy. The other guy happens to be a real good friend of mine that's local. And so it's like, all right, I'll work with this guy, and then I can switch over to Peter as well.
Yeah.
It's like, it was expensive. I saw it, but it's like, how serious are you about the growth that you want to have in yourself?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so, when you listen to him speak, I've heard many different podcast episodes he's on. It's like, I literally, and I kid you not, there's an interview that he has with another guy, an Australian guy. And I watched it, and he starts talking about the redness under his eyes and where it came from, and starts working through like how his heart's been closed up and stuff. And I literally brought my girlfriend in, I brought Lauren in, and I was watching it on my TV on YouTube. I scroll back and I was like, you have to watch the last 20 minutes of this. And I sent it to him, and I was like, I've watched a lot of coaches. I've watched Tony Robbins a lot. I've watched every coach you could possibly think of that's a big name. I go, I think this guy's the best. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that this guy can pull up an unawareness that somebody has, like a blind spot, and work through it so quickly. I was like, this guy's fucking incredible. So I do agree that he's the guy's.
I mean,
I'll hold you accountable to that.
Yeah, all right. Let's go.
I'm going to text you next week and make sure.
Yeah, he blows my mind. All right. So for people listening, who want to be a coach, I think we've established one of the things that's really important: get a coach.
Yeah.
First get a coach.
Yeah.
And I think that's a step that a lot of people are missing. Mm-hmm. It's like really get in there and really see what it's like to be coached.
Yep.
And I think for me, I've had the blessing of many shamans, many mentors, many things that I've kind of created this amalgamation of capital C coach from many forms, but never had like a coach. And that's not my primary role either. I coach people in Fit for Service, but I'm also like the kind of the leader of the organization. Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of other people that come in. But I think it'll be really valuable for me to have, like, especially, someone like Peter at that level, because I learn something from him every time he fucking speaks.
Yeah.
But then there's other things too. So if you're going to talk through people, and I know you have programs as well that help people with a lot of that, and please touch that as well. But if someone really feels called to become a coach, which many people do, what do you think are the steps beyond them also getting a coach?
So I'll tell you first off, before I dive into that, I'll tell you why I'm so passionate about coaching. So I hired my first coach when I was 19. And oddly enough, so it's $500 a month, and I got 2 people with it. And the funny thing was, I got lucky. It was actually Hal Elrod and his best friend. I was their very first coaching client back in 2006. They're old Cutco guys. I'm an old Cutco guy. I hired them. I paid $350 a month for rent. I paid $500 a month to talk to them and to have access to them. Mm-hmm. For 2 years, it was great. I don't remember anything we talked about for 2 years. I just remember it was really great, but there's one thing that I remember being on the phone call with his best friend, which his name's John Berghoff. And guy's a genius, super smart. And he was only like 24 at the time. I was 19. And I was making excuses as to why I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. I was in Cutco and sales company. I wasn't making the money that I wanted. I wasn't making the calls. I wasn't showing up to our calls on time. I'd be like 3 minutes late. Only thing I remember him saying to me that literally has changed the course of my life is he goes, "Hey, Rob, if a business fails, whose fault is it?" And I was like, "It's the CEO's fault." He goes, "Okay, if a business succeeds, whose fault is it?" And I said, "It's the CEO's fault." He said, "So if you get to the end of your life and it wasn't what you wanted it to be, whose fault would that be?" And I was like, "It'd be my own." Mm-hmm. And he goes, "And if you get to the end of your life and it is what you want it to be, and you created everything that you wanted to, whose fault would that have been?" And I go, it would be mine. He goes, the problem with you is you're making too much excuses and you're not acting like the CEO of your life. You're making excuses, you're externalizing all of the blame and putting it on other people or other circumstances, when in reality, you have to take the blame for everything in your life. The same way that if the business succeeds, it's the CEO's fault. If it fails, the CEO's fault. If your life is shit and you regret everything, it's your fault. There's no one else that you can blame. But if you get to the end of your life and you're like, yeah, man, I did it. It's your fault. And literally that moment like changed my life. That one, I don't remember what we talked about for 2 years, but it was all good stuff. But that one moment changed the course of my life. Like where I grew up, real nice area, but also, you know, because of the fact that there was a lot of money that was there, there's a lot of poor people. There's also a lot of money though. So we used to go party at all the rich kids' house, right? There's a lot of, at that point in time, it was the most drug overdoses anywhere in the state of Florida, right? So I know a lot of people who have overdosed from a lot of things, and I could have gone that route, absolutely. But it was like this fork in the road of like, I could have gone one way, and that moment made me go a different direction. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, is because literally everybody has that opportunity. And even if they're not a coach, people who are out there listening, a conversation with somebody can change their life. Yeah. Like don't underestimate that. Yeah. So that's the first thing of why I think coaching is so important, is because a conversation can literally change somebody's life. Like that's fucking wild. If you think about it. And so I'm super passionate about it just because of that. The second thing that people need to do is immediately people go to, I need to get certified. And I don't know how many listeners you have, and I know it's a pretty decent amount. I'm going to just say it to everybody. Most certifications are fucking scams. Do you want to know why? Because they teach you a little bit of how to be a coach, but they don't teach you how to make money, right? And it's like, if I'm starting a business, I don't want it to be paid like a hobby. I want it to be paid like an actual business, right? And so I think what it comes down to more than anything else is if somebody wants to be a coach, they need to have a coach. They need to have somebody, or they need to at least have a friend. The thing about it that I've come to realize is that the better that I become as a person, the better I become as a coach. And so a lot of people have this feeling, almost everybody that starts off as a coach has the imposter syndrome. Like, who am I?
Which is, I think, why they reach for certifications, because it gives them something they can hold on to when they feel like, wow, I shouldn't be doing it. But almost all certifications, like people be like, I'm going to go get my nutrition certification. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? That's like 15 years old content that you're really trying to study. What is it, asparagus and egg whites? Like we're past that now. Like we've fucking moved past that.
And so it's like, 100%. And I agree with you. And it's like, we all know people who have degrees and certifications flying off the wall, but they still can't figure it out in life. Right. And so it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like the lack of self-worth. You know, bringing Joe Rogan now because of lack of self-worth is also the lack of self-worth of who am I to go and coach somebody this. So what I always tell people is like, have a particular thing that you become obsessed with. Like for me, the way it happened for me, I'm just really fucking intrigued by humans. Like I just love watching people and watching their body and listening to what they're saying and going in my head going, where did this come from? Like, I wonder what the relationship with their mom and dad is like. And usually that's going on in my head. And then I'm really intrigued by like neurobiology and like figuring out the chemicals inside somebody's brain to make them do something or not do something. So it's kind of like becoming a specialist in something. There's a lot of people that listen to you that are incredible. Like they go to the gym and they're in incredible shape, but they literally don't need to go and get a certification to go tell everybody how to do exactly what they just did. They've got knowledge. It's just sometimes the people are the best, like could be possibly the best coaches. It's so easy for them because it's like, oh yeah, of course I do this at the gym. Of course I eat this. Of course I drink this much water. Of course I have this morning routine. It's so natural to them to do what they do that it's almost autopilot that they don't even think that they could teach other people. And so what I always say is like, if you're going to try to figure out what it is that you want to do, because people are like, well, I want to become I had a lady one time that was like, I want to become I don't want to tell you exactly what it was because I don't want her to hear it and be like, oh my God, she's making fun of me. But it was very, very like, if you've been cheated on and you're Christian and you live in this section of the country. I was like, that's a little bit too specialized. Like, could you also help other people, other women? And then someone will say, I want to be a women's empowerment coach. I'm like, well, if a man came in and said, hey, I have this issue. Can you help me? Could you help him? And they're like, yeah. And would that make you feel good to also help a man? It would? Okay. So then maybe you just go a little bit wider and go, I'm actually an empowerment coach. Maybe I help these types of people. So it's like, for me, it's like, number one, realize that you probably need a coach because there's blind spots that you have. And number two, figure out what it is that you're just either obsessed with, or that you have this really, and I could probably say this is how On It got built to what it is. You probably became really intrigued as to the chemicals and the way it works in someone's body and getting into that. And that's why you became a specialist in this with no degree, but it was able to help you build this amazing company. It's the same thing where it's like, I'm really interested in how nutrition works in someone's body and how it makes them feel. I have a lady who lives in the UK that's been with us for about a year, and she crushes it, but she's cured cancer in people based off of changing their nutrition, right? She's a fucking wizard with it. And so when you think about those types of things, it's like, she doesn't have degrees around that stuff. She's been in this game for a while. She figured it out on her own, and now she's teaching it to other people. And so it's like, what are you just so obsessed with that you're going to learn about and want to read anyways? If I didn't do what I do now, and I wasn't making any money doing it, I would still be geeking out on all of the stuff that Andrew Huberman says.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just love those things. And so it's like, figure out what you're interested in and you just want to learn more about. And usually that becomes a path. And then when people say that they're not good enough and they have the imposter syndrome, what they're usually doing and who they're trying to fix is them 5 years ago. So just ask yourself what you needed 5 years ago. If you could right now in 2021, coach yourself in 2016, what did you need in 2016? And almost always people are like, I got it. I figured it out. Because we're never coaching people that aren't like us. We're coaching us a few years behind. And a coach is not a guru. It's not somebody who's like, got it all figured out. I tell everybody on my podcast, I'm fucked up. I mess things up all of the time. I'm not this perfect human. I'm just been working on myself for 16 years. I'm a little bit further on down the path. And so I think if people were just to open up and go, okay, you know, and it is a great way to make money, which is a good thing about it if people really want to. But if they just go, I want to be fulfilled, even if somebody were to just help people for free with nutrition or with fitness or whatever it is, they could, it just makes you feel good to make somebody else feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Some of the programs that you offer really help coaches turn their coach into a profitable business, coaching practice in a profitable business. But if you were to distill a couple things, and of course, for anybody interested who wants to escalate that, what's your principal course called?
So it's called Business Breakthrough, but they can just message me on Instagram and we can talk about it and stuff.
Yeah.
They got to get on a call with one of my team and make sure that they're the right person. We have a little bit of a filter on it.
Yeah, the whole process. Okay. So if they feel called for the escalation, but if you were going to distill down like just a couple points for people who are listening, who are interested in this and interested in either becoming more profitable in their coaching business or entering in with this kind of like, yes, I want to help people. Yes, I want this to be my profession as well. What are a few things on the business side that you could tell people about how to get clients, how to retain clients? Just a couple simple things. Yeah,
it's super simple. There's a lot of people that work out here that it literally, they could, no joke, probably make $500,000 to $1 million next year as a coach. No fucking, like not even kidding in any sort of way. It's just they don't have the system to do it. And so it's like in the coaching business, it's a coaching business. There's the coaching side and there's the business side. And if you don't know the business side, you could be the best fucking coach in the world, but you're gonna be the best broke coach in the world, right? Like it's that simple. Right. I know somebody who has 10,000 followers on Instagram and makes $2 million a year off of that, right? And people think like, oh, I need to have like, 400, 500,000 followers like Aubrey or a few 100,000 like me. And it's like, you don't need that. What you need is a system. And so the system is super simple. There's only really a few parts to it. If somebody has an Instagram, usually Instagram's the easiest way to grow it because you can slide in people's DMs, you can talk to them and stuff. And and there's a whole lot of tactics of how to actually have somebody reach out to you and not have to reach out to them. But it's ridiculously simple, okay? With me, I have a few places around my house I go to. I go to the same coffee shop every single day. Like they know me by name. Oh, it's Rob. Oh, where's Bear? Like they know my dog. Like, oh, where's Toby? Where's Lauren? Like they know us that well that we're always there. I frequent like 10 places within 5 miles of my house. And I sometimes go to other places. There's no difference on social media. So this will change a lot of people in the way that they see it. A lot of people think that real life is different than social media. Social media is the exact same thing. It's just people bring their real life into social media. So the same way that I go to the same coffee shop, I go to 5 different places to eat restaurants, they're communicating and liking and following the same 10 people. And with the algorithms, they're going to keep getting hit by those things. So then you ask yourself the question, okay, me 5 years ago and what I needed, what social media accounts would I follow in order to be able to connect with those people? like, what did I need? So someone might say like, oh, Tony Robbins, right? So then you go out there and you go, okay, well, how can I start? And there's definitely strategies around how to do this much better, but it's like, how can I find these people that are following Tony Robbins that look like my perfect client? When I hit their social media page, I know that this person seems to check the boxes after I've gotten very clear on what it is. Now I've got to make a connection with them. And there's ways to do it without like just cold DMing them and just, say, hey, you want my services or any of that shit? Because nobody wants that. But ways to connect with those people to then get them to follow. So then you say, okay, who would they follow? If my perfect client's out there, who are they? Who would they follow? And then how can I connect with them to get them to start following me? My idea is to make somebody go, who the fuck is Rob Dial? Like he commented on one of my posts. I don't like the whole like follow unfollow thing. I'm not a fan of that. People do like, I'm going to follow these people, and then 2 weeks later I'm going to unfollow all of them, and I'm going to have more followers because they found me. And then you have to realize that your Instagram is your business card, right? So if you were yourself 5 years ago and you go and look at your Instagram, would you want to follow yourself? And some people look at it and they're like, no, I wouldn't. Okay, if literally that's your business card to show people that you're the best at what you do, how can you make your business card look at the best that you possibly can? So it's very simple. You need to have a strategy to grow on social media. And there's many different ways to do that. People can YouTube it. There's tons of different ways of how to grow on social media, right? And then what you need to do is you need to have a strategy to get that person who now follows you onto a phone call. And then you need to have a strategy once they're onto a phone call that you get them to buy your services. So it's not hard. Like this is fucking like on it's crazy, dude. Do you know how do you know what I sit at my house and I've been a coach and I teach people who sit at their houses and they make, $40, $50, $100, $200, $300,000, $500,000 a year as coaches. Like you have products and people and lights that are on, and you have like, I just walked by on the way to the bathroom. Like, I don't even know how many things you guys make, but you have to go through research to find those things. Like there's a lot that has to go into putting on it together. Literally, if I decide today I want to be a coach, I can make money today.
Yeah.
And it's the profit's 100%, which is amazing about it, which is why a lot of people want to become coaches. So it's like, you need to develop your social media. That's the first thing. Okay. You need to develop your social media, realize that's your business card. You need to get people who now follow you on your social media, have a strategy to talk with them. You could do it in stories. If I'm sitting there, I'm like, hey, I'm talking about Amar who just made $250,000 in his first 5 months. And I'm like, hey, if you're interested in it, just send me a DM below. I've now opened it for someone to raise their hand and say, hey, I kind of want some help. So if you're a nutrition coach and you're like, hey, I have this one client, and there's a lot of people who are like not physical therapists, they're personal trainers, right? They could be a personal trainer here, just a normal gym, and they might make 30, 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year, but you've got specialized knowledge. You literally then you're like, hey, one of my clients been working here for 3 months and she's lost 15 pounds. If you're out there and you're trying to make your summer body, and you're curious about it, send me a message. We could talk about it.
Yeah.
Then you got to get them onto a phone call, and then you've got to close them. Here's the thing about the phone call though. Everybody listening, if you are a coach, you want to be a coach, just fucking charge more. Like you have to charge more. Here's the reason why. My coach, I told you, is $10,000 a month. I take that shit very seriously. When you work with Peter Crone, I've looked at his website. It's $25,000 a month for a minimum of 3 months. You're going to take that shit seriously because that's your car, right? It's not cheap to do that. So people are always like, oh, I want to, do my coaching for low ticket and charge $47 a month or something like that for people to work with me. The less you charge somebody, the less serious they take it. The best thing that you can do for somebody is charge them more. And the reason why is because when you charge more, they take it more serious. And when they take it more serious, guess what happens? They actually get some fucking results in their life. And when they get results in your life, guess what they do? They keep you as a coach. And that's how you develop long-term clients of working with people, is because, and at the same time, you make more money. And sometimes you charge more than you think you're worth, and somebody says yes. And now you're like, oh shit, I better show up for them at the highest level that I possibly can.
It holds you accountable.
Makes you better. And so it's like, by charging more, everybody wins. And it's like, you have a Gucci bag that's on right now, right? You paid more than it would have been if it was just a bag that you would have gotten down at Walmart, right? So it's like, we hold value in things that are more expensive. Like there's a whole lot of science that goes into it, of when we charge more or when we spend more on something, we care about it more. If it would have been a $10 watch that broke, I would have been like, all right, throw it away. But it was a $10,000 watch that broke, and I was like, oh, okay, that hurts a little bit. And so when you charge more, your clients take it more serious, you make more money, but then you also show up at a higher level and they show up at a higher level. So the system's super simple. Grow on social media. How do you get those people from social media onto a phone call? You usually got to chat with them in DMs a little bit, see what's going on with them. You get them onto a phone call. and then you close them on your services. It's literally that simple. There's nothing else to it. And you could literally pick up new clients today from the exact system. Social media, getting them into a DM conversation, getting them onto a phone call, then you become a coach.
Boom. Spoken like the master you are.
It's not the hardest thing in the world. But people have to realize like, just you are good enough to charge for your coaching.
Yeah.
That's usually the biggest barrier. Like I almost didn't start my podcast, swear to God, because Tony Robbins has a podcast. And because he didn't even have a podcast. I almost didn't start because Tony Robbins exists. And I was like, who would listen at that point in time to 29-year-old Rob talk about things, and they could go listen to Tony Robbins? Like, why the fuck would they listen to me? And fast forward 6 years, it's almost at 100 million downloads. And it's like, who the fuck, like I almost didn't do it because of that. I wouldn't have this life that I have now and like feel fulfilled if I hadn't gotten past that imposter syndrome. So it's like whatever people are feeling, the imposter syndrome will crush your dreams. You know, it's that ego telling you you're not good enough.
And everybody feels it. Like that's the thing I tell people who struggle with that comes up a lot. Like anytime you're stretching yourself, you're going to feel like it's imposter syndrome because you've never done it.
100%.
You know, and if you don't want to have imposter syndrome, just do the same shit you've always done in life and never grow.
Yeah.
You know, but otherwise, if you're stretching, you're going to feel that. And then eventually you get so used to performing and things you haven't done that you have confidence and you don't feel like an imposter. Like if I dream up a new thing for the Fit for Service community, it's not like I'm like, oh, I don't know if we can do this. I'm like, we'll pull it off. We always do. But you eventually get to that confidence. But nonetheless, every time it's like, fuck, we've never done this. I don't know if like, so it's just normal. And that's what I always tell people. Like you're going to feel it no matter what, as long as you're stretching people. It's almost worrisome if you stop feeling imposter syndrome because that means you're coasting.
Yeah. Well, that's also why you feel the feeling of like, I can't believe this actually happened. Like you were saying, with everything that you do. Yeah. But the good thing about the imposter syndrome and the good thing about fear is that fear is showing you the edge of your comfort zone. Like fear is a physical manifestation of where you're pushing past your normal self. So usually what we do is we feel fear and then we back off a little bit. When in reality, when we feel fear, we should literally feel that feeling and go, oh, I've met my edge. This is where I need to keep pushing. Yeah. You know, if we're really about expansion and trying to expand ourselves into something more, then when we feel that feeling of fear, it's like, oh, here it is. I found it. Let me keep pushing past it. Like people think that people like you don't feel fear. Like he must not feel fear. You know, and you hear people like, oh, our fearless leader, right? Like everyone feels fear. It just depends on how you play with it. Do you listen to it or do you dance with it? Like, what is it? Oh, it's like, I feel the fear. Okay, here it is, but it's not going to hold me back from doing what it is I truly want to do. Yeah. Yeah. And people imagine fears just because I'm not afraid of what you're afraid of doesn't mean I've transcended fear. You know, I can walk up and give a speech and not be nervous about it to 100 people, 500 people, whatever. But I can, you know, find myself terrified alone in my car, you know, about some manifestation of my own mind. Yeah. You know? So it's a good point. And fear is always a compass of like, all right, this is showing me something, showing me a place where I'm not free. It's showing you your edge. That's all that it's doing. Yeah. And it's the comfort zone I say your comfort zone is where your dreams go to die. So if you want to stay in, in that motherfucker, you can. But when you feel the fear, it's like, oh, this is the feeling I'm supposed to feel. Yeah, exhilaration. You know? Where can people find you, brother? The Mindset Mentor podcast is my podcast. It comes out 4 times a week, usually about 20-minute episodes. And then Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR, is Instagram. They can connect me. If anyone's a coach, they want to learn more about it, we can chat about it. It would have been Rob Dial, but there's a guy who, you know, hasn't posted in 6 years, and now it's like 6 pictures on there, and 4 of them are pictures of weed, but they're still up there. I can't get it. So it's Rob Dial Jr. is the easiest place to find me. Yeah, beautiful, man. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, bro. Thanks for having me, man. Thanks, everybody. Much love. Peace. Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere, and leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.